Samael Aun Weor. The Parsifal Unveiled, Part 2. Chapter 25. Seek and ye shall find. The sacred scriptures state, Ask, and it shall be given you, seek, and ye shall find, knock, and it shall be opened unto you. Matthew 7 verse 7. It is written with burning coals in the book of all mysteries that the lenu or disciple must question, if the intimate self-realization is what he truly longs for with all the strength of his soul. The divine ones and humans know very well that Parsifal as Chela or disciple did not become the king of the Grail because he did not ask for an explanation regarding the reason for Amfortas' agony. The bread and wine of the transubstantiation are distributed on the sacred tables. The brethren seat themselves at the feast. Parsifal, however, remains standing apart, in a state of mystical ecstasy. Finally, his delectable and ineffable exaltation ceases upon hearing Amfortas' cries of agony. Gurnemanz, the ancient hierophant, believes Parsifal is unconscious and even pitiless to what is happening. Therefore, he comes up to him in a severe attitude and pushes him out of the sacred precinct. In very seriously passing judgment on this brilliant theme of such a royal Wagnerian drama, glorious as no other, we can discover, not without a certain mystical wonder, the three esoteric classic degrees, apprentices, comrades and masters. The adolescent from the first part of the drama still does not know anything about the mansion of delights and the corner of love with its dangerously blossoming, lovely women, neither does he know anything about Kundry, Herodias, Gundrigia, the exquisitely sinful one. He is still the apprentice of occult masonry. The Parsifal of the second part is the man who courageously descends into the Dantesque ninth circle. He is the aspirant who works in the flaming forge of Vulcan, the comrade. The hero of the third part is the master who returns into the temple after having suffered too much. The boy of the first part does not even have his consciousness awakened. He is just one of those many peregrines who travel in much secrecy throughout the obscure jungles of life, in search of a compassionate traveler who can have, among his treasures, a precious balm in order to heal his painful heart. The joy is very great when he finds on his suffering path the ancient hermit Gurnemanz, who serves him as guide or guru. The Parsifal of the second part is the ascetic who consciously descends into the infernal worlds. He is the man who works in the forge of the Cyclops, the mystic who defeats the 7 priestesses of temptation. The devotee from the third part is the adept dressed with the wedding garment of the soul, marvelous synthesis of the solar bodies, within which is contained the superior emotion, the authentic mind and the conscious will. The triumphant return into the temple of the Grail is the principal characteristic of the Parsifal from the third part. The anchorite returns into the sacred precinct, grasping with his dexterous hand the formidable holy pike, the blessed shaft. Chapter 26. The Spectre of Kundry. In the second act of this Wagnerian drama, a horrible dungeon and the inner keep of an old tower almost in ruins appears with sinister clarity. A gallery of bare stone, steps inevitably lead up to the battlements of the Dantesque wall. Darkness dreadfully reigns down below in the mysterious background of that black den, which is always accessed by descending from the dreadful abutment of the rampart. Diverse instruments of black magic and necromantic apparatuses appear dispersed here, there, and everywhere. On the dreadful abutment of the abject rampart of abominations, to one side, is Klingsor, the tenebrous one, fatally sitting before the famous metal mirror of magic. The left-handed personage from darkness astrally sees marching past in the perfidious mirror all the extraordinary events from the former act, which occurred around the domains of the Holy Grail. Supreme moments in humanity exist, and this is precisely one of them. The terrible moment has arrived, the hour of great decisions. The dismal magician of darkness has achieved bringing towards his den, just as many other unfortunate knights, the blameless boy Parsifal, with the evident Machiavellian purpose of making him to dreadfully fall amidst the enchantments of the irresistible, terribly beautiful blossoming women. That fascinating and tremendous hypnotic dream, in former moments we saw how Kundry, the no-named woman, the original she-devil, the sanguinary Herodias, the harpy Gundrigia was submerged in it, is now providing all of its atrocious effects. The Lord of Darkness cries out with a great voice from the depths of the abyss, he invokes and calls. Amidst the blue, malodorous smoke of disgrace, Kundry's spectre rises up and appears. Myrrh, sulfur, incense, and many other evocative perfumes burn in the censer. Ah! Ah! Tenebrous night. Mystery. Madness. Oh, rage. Sleep, sleep of sorrow and disgrace, deepest sleep. Death. So cries out the hedonic and original devilish female of all she-devils. The left-handed, somber personage gives imperative commands. Kundry protests in vain. Thus, she finally is subdued and is compelled to obey. To resign herself to serve again as an instrument of perdition. What a horror! To enwrap Parsifal with her enchantments, to make him fall as she did with the good King Amfortas is the command. Yet, the unhappy unfortunate one is just a slave under the service of the perverse one. Once the hypnotic command of the evil one is achieved, the whole tower rapidly sinks. With him, and as an art of magic, a delectable garden rises in its place. This magic garden fills the whole stage. A splendid, tropical, and luxuriant vegetation lasciviously extends itself, as if it is voraciously awaiting for the complete satisfaction of bestial pleasures. Dressed with a royal attire of a gamut of silk and crowned with bright reddish trees, the spectre of Kundry rises in order to see from afar the magnificent and broad panorama. Mute, perplexed, she listens to the white river that, amidst the rocks, roars while sundered into streamlets, and she sees portrayed upon the watery mirrors the omnipotent flame of the golden sun. The stars within the immense space, on a throne of amaranth, stand abreast, sprinkling with crystalline drops the black leaves of the sleepy acanthus. Chapter 27. The Nymphs. In the cavernous background of mystery, the fatal battlement of the very ancient rampart is exotically shown, upon whose side appears strange projections of the millenary castle building of Klingsor and its splendid terraces of arabesque style. Upon the sacred terror of these strange enigmatic battlements, the Wagnerian Parsifal emerges standing, as if by enchantment, gazing in astonishment into the bewitched gardens. The beautiful females of the holy predestination, unfortunately perverted by the spirit of evil, appear everywhere. Many dangerously beautiful young nymphs emerge, as if by dint of magic, from many places, from the gardens, as well as from the magnificent palace. They come in groups, others individually, all in an always increasing number, semi-naked, exquisite, frightfully provocative. The nymphs, who were joyfully sleeping with their lovers, the unfortunate knights of the Grail who felt amidst their amorous snares, as if they were awakening from an erotic dream, abandon now their beds of pleasure. It is the hour of temptation, and they have returned again to their ancient adventures in search of a new victim. They have come from all of the passages of the night. Behold them there. There are heads browned under the sun, as well as mature ones. There are also heads that are as if touched with gloominess and mystery, heads crowned with laurels, heads that would like to repose in heaven, some that cannot reach to smell the spring, and many others that transcend the winter's flowers. What a terrible eagerness that agitates the bosom of every nymph, when she beholds the boat that embroiders upon the waters its fugitive trail. They, the delectable feminine beauties, are intent now to seduce with their enchantments the Wagnerian young man, yet, he, with his Herculean arm, pushes them away with indignation. Unique love, already so mine, that time will season, why do you despise me? Cries out a desperate one. My hands have forgotten thee, but my eyes have beheld thee. Thus, when the world is bitter, in order to behold thee I close my eyes, cries out another one. I do not want to cherish thee ever, since I do not want thy life to break asunder my dreams' creations by your cherishing. This is what a female dreamer says. As one day thou gayest it to me, thine living image I possess, so thy remembrance daily washes my eyes with tears. This is how the most provocative female murmurs in the ear of that young man. Thus, the nymphs, or mutable females from all times, were at that point preoccupied. They were momentarily suffering for Parsifal, they were even doing the impossible. The musical transition which emphasizes the whole of this 1001 Nights scene has totally fascinated the most demanding audiences of the whole world. In this igneous transition from this colossus exist color, love, perfume, unutterable sorcery, all of that which, indeed, can seduce the human senses. Regardless, it is obvious that this hero does not succumb in the battle against temptations. Nonetheless, this is not everything. What is most terrible is still missing: the encounter with Kundry, the woman of antonomasia, the woman symbol, the marvelous Eve from Hebrew mythology. Chapter 28. The original She Devil. From within the enchanted dream of those bewitching flowers breaks out the magical voice of Kundry, the original she-devil, the prototype of perdition and of downfall. She, the one who not even Amfortas himself, the marvelous king of the Holy Grail, could in a foregone time resist. The mysterious female cries out passionately, calling the hero by his own name, the name with which, in other times, his loving mother tenderly used to name him. Parsifal, stay here, cries out the sweet voice. Here linger. Parsifal. To greet you, pleasure and joy are here. You, vulgar amorous women and flimsy children, leave him alone, fast withering charming flowers, be off. When hearing these words, the voluble, variable and versatile nymphs remain profoundly reluctant. It is written, this is known by many people, that those malignant beauties subsequently disappeared laughing into the tenebrous castle of Klingsor. Parsifal looks around timidly to the side of love whence the voice came forth. Then, he contemplates the vision of such a young and splendorous, beautiful woman. The provocative Kundry appears in altered form lying on a flowery couch, embellished with the most fantastic and tempting light veil-like garment that the Arabian style could ever dream of. Were you perhaps, O sublime feminine beauty, the one who called to me? Did you call to me, the nameless? Are you also, O gods, a flower grown and detached from this perfumed garden? Yes, answered Kundry, that impetuous blonde woman who was named Herodias. Her so tender words resound with heartbreaking accents, as a very sweet lyre. I name you, foolish pure one, foul Parsi. So pure and foolish, Parsifal, there, in the far exotic land of caliphs and sultans, your father Gamurret so named you, his son, who in your mother's womb were stirring. Precisely, to give you these tidings I was waiting here. However, indeed, I was not born amidst this garden of marvels as the other beauties. Far, far from these enchantments of 1001 nights is my beloved homeland. Just for you to find me, I lingered here a while in this corner of passionate joys. From very far lands hence came I, many extraordinary things I have seen, expecting you so that you might listen. It is good for you to know that I have the joy of knowing your mother Herselide. That exceptional woman forever weeping, born of sorrow, but laughing while before the grief for your father's love and death. Placing her hope as the most high and imperious holy duty, she decided to save you from fate like his. From clash of arms, from men in deadly conflict, she ever strove to shield you and protect you. Mother sweetest, dearest mother, who had one time pomegranate lips, ivory teeth, long curls of hair falling as a cascade upon those, her warm and perfumed shoulders, upon that, her body chiseled with burin. Holy, truest, dearest mother who had one time all the enchantments of a beautiful houri, tender, white and perfumed mother, as a Madonna lily that, when opening its calyx, on tender mosses you were cradled. So anxious was she, and fearful, such griefs that never would disturb you. Can you remember her anxious cry when late and far you were roaming? Mother, sweetest, dearest mother, who in those nights of full moon placed a swing in the great tree of your garden. There she brought sweets to you and your dinner scented with moss, carnation, verbena, roses, peaches, and jasmine. You were heedless of all her care, of all her anguished grieving, when one day you did not return and left no trace behind you. Long days and nights, for you she anxiously waited, until her cries grew silent, and died. Chapter 29. The Terrible Kiss. In a tremendously growing surprise due to the marvelous narrative of Kundry, the original she-devil, Parsifal sinks down at the beauty's feet, struck with awe and overwhelmed by the most intense distress. Kundry states, had you felt such grief, then consolation's sweet relief within your heart you did not know, let sorrow that you feel, let torment yield to the joy that love can reveal. Acknowledge your ignorance, and then it is ended, by knowledge your folly soon is mended. Of love now learn the rapture that Gamurret once learned, when Herzlide's passion within him fiercely burned. For love that gave you life and being, must death and folly both remove. Love sends you now a mother's blessings, greet a son with love's first passionate kiss. While delectably speaking with her so touching language, Kundry, the most superb beauty, has bent her enchanting head completely over the head of Parsifal, and now presses her accursed purple lips to his mouth in a long and ardent kiss. Nevertheless, there is a time for everything. The igneous contact of such a frightful sexual passion initiates a gesture of intense terror in the hero of this Wagnerian drama. As though to subdue a rending pain in his heart, he cries out with all of the strength of his soul, Amfortas. The spear wound. The spear wound. It burns here in my heart. Oh! Torment! Torment! Fearfulest torment! The cry of anguish pierces my soul. Oh! Oh! Keen anguish! Piteous sufferer! The wound that I saw bleeding is now bleeding in me. Here, here. No. No. Not the spear wound, is it? Still freely the blood may stream from my side. It is here. Here, a flame in my body. It is the yearning, the wild, fearful yearning that fills my senses and holds them fast with fire. Oh! Pain of loving. The whole of my being throbs, blazes and shakes in sinful guilty yearning. The best comes afterwards. The hero evokes the remembrance of the sacred cup and the divine blood shed by the sin. Thus, heroically, he rejects Kundry, the Wagnerian Magdalene who dreadfully wallows, lying on her flowery couch, agitated by the most tremendous lust. In vain, Kundry then appeals to all the enchantments, deceptions and artifices suggested by her cunning. The hero escapes away from her. The exasperated and defeated sinful woman, without giving up what she thought was an easy prey, calls in her aid the magician, who appears on the rampart holding the lance of the Lord. He hurls the spear against Parsifal with the intention of wounding him, as he did with Amfortas. Yet, since the hero is pure, he becomes invulnerable. Thus, the spear remains hanging over Parsifal's head, who then seizes the spear, and in an ecstatic gesture swing it in the sign of the cross. Under such a kind of conjuration, the tenebrous castle of Klingsor falls into the horrible precipice, converted into cosmic dust. The garden of delights withers to a simple penitent's desert, and the ground is scattered with faded women flowers, which whirl on the ground, swept away by dreaded hurricanes. Terrible moment is that one in which Kundry, the malignant beauty, sinks down with a cry, as if she was fatally wounded. Parsifal pauses victoriously, withdraws and disappears. Chapter 30. Practical Metaphysics. The authentic magic, the practical metaphysics of Bacon, is the mysterious science that allows us to control the subtle forces of nature. Practical magic is in accordance with novelise, the prodigious art that allows us to consciously have influence over the interior aspects of the human being and of nature. Love is without any doubt the intimate ingredient of magic. It is ostensible that the marvelous substance of love works magically. Goethe, the great German initiate, also declared himself in agreement with the magical existence of a creative being, with a psychic magic that acts over the bodies. The fundamental law of every magical influence is based on polarity. All of us human beings, without exception, have certain amounts of electric and magnetic forces in ourselves. Therefore, similar to a magnet, we exert a force of attraction and a force of repulsion. This magnetic force is very powerful, especially between man and woman who adore each other, and it is unquestionable that its action reaches very far. The word magic comes from the Aryan root maf, it also comes from the Persian magu, Sanskrit mahas, Latin magus, and nibur that in German means more, signifying in its own sense a way of understanding and a knowing beyond that of ordinary. Evaluation. In the name of truth we have to state the following. Neither hormones nor patented vitamins is what humanity needs in order to live, but complete knowledge of you and me, which is the intelligent interchange of the most selected effective faculties between man and woman. Sexual magic, Mithuna, is based on the polar properties of the man and the woman, which without any doubt have their potential element in the phallus and the uterus. Sexual functionalism, deprived from any spirituality and from any love, is only one pole of life. Sexual yearning and spiritual longing in a complete mystical function constitute in themselves the two radical poles of every sane and creative eroticism. The physical body is for us, the Gnostics, something like a materialized and condensed soul and not an impure, sinful element, as the authors of absolute asceticism of a medieval type suppose. In contraposition to absolute asceticism with its denying life character, emerges as if by enchantment the revolutionary asceticism of the new Aquarian era, that is the intelligent mixture of what is sexual and what is spiritual. By all means, it stands out that sexual magic or sex yoga leads intelligently to the mystical union of the soul with sexuality, that is to say, vivifying sexuality. Then, what is sexual stops being a motive of shame, dissimulation, or taboo. Thus, it becomes profoundly religious. The magic consciousness is an outcome of the complete integral fusion of spiritual enthusiasm with sexual yearning. It is urgent, unavoidable, and indispensable to emancipate ourselves from the vicious circle of the vulgar coupling, and to consciously penetrate into the glorious sphere of the magnetic equilibrium. We must rediscover ourselves within our beloved one, to find in him, her the path of the razor's edge. Sexual magic prepares, commands, fastens, ties and unties repeatedly, in harmonic rhythms, those thousands of millions of physical and psychic contrivances that constitute our own particular interior universe. There are difficulties we have to recognize, for what is unquestionable is the double problem that the nervous currents and the subtle influences that in a conscious or unconscious way exert upon our psychic mood. To wisely govern such delicate mechanisms, currents or influences during the sexual trance is only possible by means of the personal experience of each one of us. This specific type of knowledge becomes non-transmissible, since it is the outcome of individual experimentation. It is not something that can be shown as apprehensible and visible. Chapter 31. The Nervus Sympathicus. The nervus sympathicus is fundamental in all the rituals of high magic. Without any doubt, it is in itself a potent condenser of feelings that alternates and concentrates the whole marvelous circuit of our psychic faculties and through which our thoughts, concepts, desires, ideas and yearnings, etc., are governed. Nuclear physics has come to demonstrate in an impressive, clear and definitive way that all matter is immaterial. It is unquestionable that all the internal cellular rhythms are psychic, psyche. The unity of the body and the essence manifests itself in a form of electrode vibrations through the realm of exterior and interior sensations. Indeed, only by means of the intimate esoteric aspiration directed towards the whole, towards the inevitable, towards the insuperable, can men and women who adore each other become complete, integral, unitotal. It is written with golden words in the great book of cosmic existence that only in that masculine-feminine plenitude can the opposite sexes find the reciprocal perfect equilibrium. With the simultaneous submission to our Father who is in secret and to our Divine Mother Kundalini, man and woman have in their hands Ariadne's slender thread of mystical ascension, the golden hemp string that will guide them from the darkness to the light, from death to immortality. It is indubitable, any competent esotericist knows it, that the authentic, procreative, psychic and spiritual L-forces are deposited in the vital depth or lingam sarira of our organism. The sympathicus or secondary nervous system, with the whole web of its sensible ganglionic nets, is the mediator and conductor towards the interior reality that definitively not only influences the organs of the soul, but also governs, directs, and controls the most important centers in the interior of our organism. It is evident, clear, and manifested that the sympathicus also guides in an equally mysterious way the marvels of fetal conception and the activities of the heart, kidneys, suprarenal capsules, sexual glands, etc. The sympathicus, by means of the molecular current and the crystallization of cosmic rays, balances amidst the rhythms of the universal fire all the physical and psychic elements that are subordinate to it. The nervus sympathicus is also a marvelous, extraordinary, and formidable nervus idioplasticus. We must emphasize the idea that the secondary system works as a mediator between the tridimensional subjective life and the interior world of spiritual objectivity. The nervus sympathicus is the great medial equilibrant that pacifies and reconciles the pair of opposites of philosophy within the living depth of our consciousness. The revolutionary Gnostic movement affirms that the medieval Christian asceticism now becomes extemporaneous, antiquated, and reactionary. It is ostensible that in these Aquarian times, many ancient sexual cults, frequently Asiatic in their origin, will awake to life anew. Chapter 32. Adam Kadmon. The primeval human beings, the sexual androgynous Adam Kadmon, reproduced themselves by means of imagination and willpower united in a vibrant harmony. It is written with fiery coals in the Book of All Mysteries that in the union of these two magic poles, imagination and willpower, is found the clue of all powers. Ancient Kabbalistic traditions state that the human being lost that creative, imaginative, and volitive power because of the downfall into sin. They state that due to it, the human being was expelled from Eden. Such a Kabbalistic concept has solid foundations. To re-establish that original unity of the primeval androgyny is precisely the principal objective of sexual magic. By means of sex yoga with its famous Sahaja Maithuna, we make ourselves integral, unitotal, complete. The transcendental cosmic depth of sexuality is unquestionable. Esoteric sexology permits us to perform an electrical biological link between those psychics and physiological transcendental mysterious zones, in order to convert ourselves into authentic mutants. The love for our spouse is mystically united with splendid representations that have their origin in the world of the pure spirit. The hour in order to see the sexual functions, not as a motive of shame, taboo, or sin, but as something infinitely elevated, sublime and terribly divine has arrived. Therefore, sex yoga, Mithuna, works by transfiguring us radically and by obviously giving an ideal accentuation to that which is sexual in the soul of each one of us. Capable of sexual magic are those intelligent and comprehensible people who try to transcend the dualism that separates the psychic world from the physical world. Creative imagination is the marvelous agency of sexual life, and it possesses in itself a divine cosmic quality. Only the magical mirror of imagination is the one that holds in itself the will of our Father who is in secret. Therefore, the willpower and imagination of two lovers, man and woman, who love each other give rise to the ability of giving form to their intimate universe by means of their common sexual ardor. In all the old books of ancient wisdom it is always stated about the sacred island and about the holy gods. Such a blessed and imperishable island has never throughout the history of the innumerable centuries participated in the nemesis of the other continents. This is because, indeed, it is the only land whose unique destiny is to endure from the beginning until the ending of the Mahamanvantara, passing through each cosmic round. This island is without any doubt the archaic paradisiacal cradle of Adam Kadmon. The first human root race, androgynous people, protoplasmic, capable of reproducing themselves, as we already stated, by means of the power of imagination and willpower united in vibrant harmony. This is a venerated island, an exotic abode of the last divine mortals, selected at that time as a Shishtah for the seed of this pygmy-like humanity. This 1001 night land from the Jinn paradises is located in the septentrional regions of the world. The northern polar star fixes its vigilant sight upon it, from the dawn until the termination of the dusk of a day of the great breath. This is a blessed island that we must search for within the very bottom of our inner consciousness. Adam Kadmon must be born within each one of us, by means of the marvelous power of sexual magic. This is how you will fill 100 lacrimatories with the salt of your eyes. This is how you will frightfully sigh until fighting an impetus against the painful wind, which passing by is cruelly destroying the perfumed petals of the flowers of your gardens. This is how you will bitterly weep until hurting to death the bosom of the starry night. I swear to you by the eternal living God that by no means can your intimate self-realization be possible if you remove from your life the joy of love, of sexual magic. Chapter 33. The Divine Couple. It is a terrible moment when the erotic weapons of the overwhelming passionate love, very special patrimony of Kundry, the superior woman. The most enchanted and pernicious of all creatures in their eternal victory, must enter into activity. The rugged vesture of that penitent one from the sullen land, of that loyal messenger of the Holy Grail, has disappeared. Kundry, Herodias, Gundrigia is now the noble feminine beauty with all the marvelous power of her irresistible magical fascination. Amidst the delectable penumbra of the garden, it is understood that the bewitched conjuration from the evil magician has frightfully enveloped her within his fatal sortilege. The enslaving discharge from the abysmal desideratum is frankly already unavoidable. Thus, as it is natural, the miserable beauty suffers within the unknowable profundities of her intimate consciousness. The very beautiful and frightful scene of sexual temptation has started amidst the fascinating mirrors of life. Only God knows what happens within the psychic depths of that provocative woman. It is unquestionable that within such an adorable female exists a battle of the woman against the woman, of the temptress against the redeeming one, of love against the cruel perfidy that poisons everything. It is obvious that the two countries struggle hand to hand within the miraculous soul of that beauty. It is ostensible that in the depth of mystery this fascinating sweet creature becomes just another victim of the perverted natural impulses. Enslaved by the sexual passion of the enjoyment that man's attraction exercises over her own self, constrained by the magical potency of the conjuration, she then inclines to her feminine ingenuity in order to subdue the young man to his temptations. When penetrating into this part of the Wagnerian drama, it is important to remember that the Persians were seeing in the woman the aspect of illusion, the element of absolute seduction. Regarding the nature of this Persian ideology, what is clear are those allegories and adopted stories from the Quran, especially the one of Joseph and Potiphar, where the aspect of the woman is shown as a universal danger. Thus, Ferdowsi transforms Potiphar's wife into Lulaika, who with her physical enchantments not only induces Joseph into temptation, but, rather, her intention was to apprehend the virtuous one through magical manners in the hallucinating snare of her lasciviousness. Thus, she received Joseph in a hall of mirrors. Her red hair, her damned purple-red lips, the rosy nipples of her erect nacreous breasts, her whole body anointed and undulant were dazzling him. Here, there and everywhere he directed his sight. Accordingly, with this interpretation of the Persian story, the patriarch Joseph could not resist and he succumbed to her craftiness. In this marvelous representation of the magic mirrors is found hidden the whole mystery of sexual fascination. Nature inclined to passionate voluptuousness is without any doubt a unique seduction, and works upon all living creatures in a hypnotic way. The tridimensional world of vain appearances imprison us horribly in this way, since we invariably succumb to the enchantment of our sexual antipode. Kundry, Herodias, Gundrigia, the mystic Magdalene from the Wagnerian Parsifal, does not ignore the living secret of her own existence. She knows very well by her own nature and instinct that she can only be liberated from the left-handed and tenebrous power of Klingsor if she finds in her path of bitterness a strong man capable of defeating himself and thus rejecting her. Weak all men. I am accursed and I bring all of them to their downfall, exclaims the temptress. Temptation is fire, the triumph over temptation is light. Blessed be the woman, blessed be love, blessed be the beings who adore each other. It is indubitable that the ancient religious cults in Greece, Chaldea, Egypt, Persia, India, Mexico, Peru, etc., were 100% of a sexual nature. Without any doubt, the acknowledgement of the sexual potency as a superterrestrial, engendering and creative force is fundamentally more self-ennobling and dignifying than the medieval attitude that relegates sex when considering it something low, sinful, filthy, and an enemy of the soul. In the sexual cult of ancient Greeks, the mortal couple aspired with all the forces of their soul to reflect in themselves the joy of the divine couple. It is stated by the legend of the centuries that the celebration of sacred nuptials were in practice in Greece and equally so in Rome. The man and the woman, Adam and Eve, anointed, preciously arrayed and crowned with sublime flowers, after a ceremony in the temple, were directing themselves to their mutual encounter as god and goddess, in order to be participants of the ritual embrace, which is that happiness of the supreme couple who reigned in heaven and earth. Each man was represented as Zeus and each woman as Hera in the sexual amorous act, thus performing a magnificent connection of the lingam yoni. It is ostensible that the joyful couple were withdrawing themselves from the sexual act without spilling Hermes' cup. Thus, sexuality at that time was the likeness of a formidable cosmic event that was making the whole universe to be shaken. This is something that we must never forget. Such a sublime identification with the divine can only be acquired by couples who are truly awakened, individualized, illuminated. Sacred experience, alchemical weddings, ritual embrace, joy without limits for the sacred couple can only be accessible to the adepts of the white fraternity. Homer, the great Greek poet, has verified a sublime and magical description of the divine couple Zeus-Hera. Beneath them, the germinating earth burst with fresh green grass, lotuses, succulent clover, hyacinths, and saffron, so thick and soft it lifted their bodies off the hard-packed ground, and there they laid down together and drew about them a golden marvelous cloud, and the sparkling dew fell upon the ground. Chapter 34. Fal Parsi. The gospel of the new Aquarian era is found within Richard Wagner's grandiose work, Parsifal. This is the doctrine of the synthesis, the primeval religion of humanity, hidden since the sad days in which the archaic wisdom, the symbolic temple, was entombed by the ruins of the Lysiatic mysteries. This was due to the tenebrous advent of Kali Yuga. With the whole delectable artifice of her enchantments, emerging from within the perfumed grove in order to tempt Fal Parsi, Kundry is the beauty of holy predestination, perverted by the spirit of evil. In the resistance, in the chastity of this young man lies the salvation of Kundry, of the woman. Yet, she is distrustful. A strong man does not exist for her. The intellectual animals are very weak. This precious female comprehends that she can only be liberated from the chains of slavery when she finds in her path a man sufficiently strong enough to reject her while in complete sexual coupling. She meets Fal Parsi, the young man. She foresees his mission. Thus, she resists in removing herself from him, yet, she is afraid of defeating him, since she is very sure of the power of the sortilege. This remarkable beauty, dressed in so much Arabian refinement, astutely starts to call him with his familiar name of Fal Parsi. Then, she continues with the law of intimate associations, carrying him finally through the path of feelings, until the very sexual origin of his existence. The exotic priestess of this delectable temptation from the 1001 Nights wants to establish a passionate vibration in the sexual center of this young man, with the evident purpose of making him to faintly fall upon her immodest arms. The previous seduction of the blossom women of Klingsor, the black magician, is also traditional among the Asiatic people. There has never existed a sacred hero who has not passed through this seduction. Krishna, the charioteer, piercing Nisamba, the oriental Kundry, with his fiery eyes, and the 7 priestesses of temptation, among the Drusian Syrians, who try to seduce the initiates, constitute the basic root of the esoteric studies. The great Kabir Jesus, tempted by the Kundry of Egyptian mysteries, was indeed the Parsifal of the sunny country of Kem. But what can we say about the blossom women who terribly assaulted the great master in the sacred land of the pharaohs? The touchstone, the alma mater of the Magnus Opus, is found in Kundry, the woman of antonomasia, the woman's symbol. Without her presence, we are inevitably condemned to the abyss and to the second death. Adorable woman, you are the path of the razor's edge, the rocky path which leads to nirvana. Who could grant me the joy of taking your white hands so that I may press my heart with them, and so that I may ardently kiss them while listening very attentively to your very sweet fascinating words, my love? Who could grant me the joy of feeling upon my chest your languid head so that I may listen to your divine sighs of love and poetry? Who could grant me the joy of placing chastely and softly my lovable lips upon your head of hair, so that you can feel my soul softly weeping with each kiss that I could leave upon it? Who could grant me the joy of stealing a single, marvelous, gleaming ray from the light of your sight in calm, so that I can have thereafter something to light the solitude of my soul? Oh, who could grant me the joy of being your own shadow, the very sweet environment that your countenance bathes, and from your celestial eyes, to be the tear which trembles in your eyelashes? Thus, I want to be a whole heart of happiness, nest of light and of divine flowers, on which your dove-like soul can sleep the virginal dream of your love. Gundrigia, Herodias, Kundry, remember that you are the secret pathway of mystery. Chapter 35. The Supreme Clue. When the world, like Tantalus who aspires in vain to reach an ideal, bends itself because of the weight of the stone of Sisyphus, and expires burned by the tunic of Nessus. When equally tenebrous and flashing, it imitates Barabbas and abhors the Just One, and as a pygmy with longings of a giant, it wallows in the bed of Procustus. When wailing amidst horrible convulsions, in order to expiate its criminal faults, torn by its ardent passions as Actaeon by his ferocious dogs. When fastened to its fatal chains it drags its miseries through the mud and everyone selfishly in grief turns a back to everybody's affliction, then, the great avatars who teach the secret path are born. Sacred candlestick that in the austere chapel burns without rest as a clear offering and consumes its wick and its wax in order to dissipate the obscurity of the altar, glorious cup where God encloses all that which is love. Sublime Parsifal, whose ambition is to wound Satan amidst the roar of the lightning and the terror of the thunder. Phoenix bird that in refulgent tasks enlivens the fire of its harsh combustion, thus, dying and becoming flying cinder from where it emerges reborn anew, victorious and pure. All of these are what the initiate is in his fatal exile. He sings to Phyllis, to her sweet name and then after. To love is the best. To kiss. Yes. In the supreme moment. Amfortas. The spear wound. The spear wound, exclaims the hero of this Wagnerian drama. Not to spill the semen, pain for the beast, pleasure for the spirit, torture for the brute one. Strange symbiosis of love and rebellion, revolutionary mysticism of Aquarius, and new asceticism. There is a heaven in your arms, O woman. Due to joy, I feel my heart oppressed. Oh, hold me in the life of your arms so that you cannot kill me with your kisses. Thus, in vain the erotic beauty then appeals to all of her enchantments. Falparsi does not spill Hermes' cup, hence he withdraws. The exasperated and defeated sinful woman, without giving up what she thought was an easy prey, uses all the sexual resources of her interior Klingsor, her animal ego, Mephistopheles, and casts the lance of the Lord against the young man. The blessed spear, emblem of the sexual force, remains hanging over the head of the initiate, who then seizes the spear with his dexterous hand, and in a gesture, he swings it in the sign of the cross. Under such a kind of conjuration, the castle of iniquities that the sinful Adam carries inside falls into the horrible precipice, converted into cosmic dust. Then, she, the terribly beautiful and frightfully delectable female, releases from her nubile throat a lustful scream. Consequently, she sinks down dismayed within her bed of pleasures. The victorious hero, holding with his dexterous hand the splendid spear of Longinus, withdraws from the sheltered bed. He pauses and walks slowly, slowly within the internal and delicate garden, under a golden and violet diffused light. Chapter 36. Hatha Yoga Pradipika. The Hatha Yoga Pradipika of the great Hindustani initiates emphasizes the transcendental idea that a coitus, which is performed with a consecrated woman, is a true panacea for the attaining of the most elevated mystical states. The sexual act is the legitimate enjoyment of human beings. It is the consubstantiation of love in the psychophysical realism of our nature. A certain great sage, whose name I do not mention, when commenting something about Hindustani Tantrism, stated, "Presently, a sect of Shiva in Bombay, India performs the sacred nuptials in accordance with the rules of Vatsyayana, the author of Kama Sutra. A selected Shakti is placed naked upon an altar. The high priest accomplishes in her his offering by means of the coitus. The gigantic image of the god Shiva, illuminated by numerous oil lamps, contemplates the carnal coupling from the heights. With a determined sign from the high priest, a general cohabitation must be verified, in which each couple must represent Shiva and his Shakti, spouse. The adepts of this sect believe that with their sexual offering they glorify the universe, which is maintained only by the eternal spontaneous procreation of divinity. Thus, they precisely reach through this act the rhythmic consonance of eternity. Previously, weeks before the beginning of these sacred nuptials, the participant was earnestly instructed by the priests, "Woe to the one who during this act allows the activity of the most meaningless profane thoughts, or rather, looks for the satisfaction of his own senses, for the wrath of the divinity will pitilessly throw itself upon him." When in the temples of Assyria, Egypt, Persia, India, Greece, etc., etc., priests and priestesses were united in the sexual act in front of the attendants, or rather, when in the temples of Shiva, hundreds of couples at the same time were copulating during determined festivities of this god. In the depth of this apparently major license, there was still a most occult and profound sense. Through the Sahaja Maithuna, the sexual act of prodigies, a fluidic essence, an extraordinary, marvelous and omnipotent magnetism is liberated, that when discharged, suddenly, in the very moment actually converts itself into the genius lucus of all magical enchantments. An ancient Japanese proverb states, "By means of veneration, one can make a dog's tooth to shine." "Your teeth are whiter than the pearls which grow from within the seas," said the great Kabir Jesus when addressing a cadaver of a dog in decay. It is evident by all means and with complete meridian clarity that this is the traditional magic, the famous Oriental Gupta Vidya, that mysterious science with which we can definitively attain the final liberation. It is unquestionable that Parsifal, the mystic hero, by courageously refraining the sexual impulse, by intrepidly withdrawing himself from that impetuous blonde woman whom they called Herodias, without spilling Hermes' cup, the ens seminis, as a fact, is grasping in his omnipotent and terribly divine dexterous hand the lance of Longinus, the extraordinary emblem of the genius lucus, the odic or magnetic force with which in a gesture he swings in the sign of the cross, in order to convert the animal ego into cosmic dust. In this new era of the zodiacal sign of Aquarius, the collective copulation in the manner of those foregone times becomes out of orbit, extemporaneous, antiquated and retarded. This is the sidereal instant in which all of us must walk on the amorous path of the perfect matrimony. To grasp with vigor the venerated lance in the laboratorium moratorium of the third logos is without any doubt something radical, if indeed, what we want is to reduce into ashes the left-handed and tenebrous castle of Klingsor or secret Mephistopheles, which each one of us carries inside. Comprehension and elimination are basic, decisive, and fundamental factors. It is unquestionable that every psychological defect must be previously comprehended in an integral way before its elimination. A didactic is necessary, this is obvious. Fortunately, we have it, and indeed, this is very simple and powerful. To pray while in the bridal chamber of the Garden of Delights, in the nuptial bed of erotic marvels, to beseech in the moment of enjoyments, in the unforgettable instant of the coitus, to ask to our Divine Mother Kundalini to splendidly grasp the magical lance in those moments of kisses and tenderness, in order to eliminate that defect that we have previously comprehended in all the departments of the mind, and subsequently to withdraw from the act, without spilling the sacred wine. The ens seminis signifies death, joy, inebriation, delight, enjoyment. On its own, comprehension is not enough. Radical and absolute elimination is urgent, unavoidable, and indispensable. Any rational homunculi could clearly comprehend the abominable defect of anger and, nonetheless, continue with it even if he devours its entrails. This wretched intellectual animal mind certainly cannot fundamentally alter anything. We need the aid of a superior power, of a living potency capable of eliminating or totally discarding the sinister entity that psychologically personifies the error which we have comprehended. Such an authority is, without any doubt, our divine and adorable Mother Kundalini, the sublime spouse of the Holy Spirit, the fiery serpent of our magical powers, the solar electronic fire that in a splendid form unfolds and develops in the dorsal spine of the ascetic. It is a vain thing to be conceited with the animal and lunar mind. By itself, it can only lead us to error. The intellect can give to itself the luxury of hiding defects or repudiating them, condemning them, justifying them, labeling them with diverse names, dissimulating them, hiding them from the sight of the neighbor, passing them from one department into another, etc. Yet, it can never eliminate them. The esoteric Christic lance of the Holy Grail and the pagan lance of Pax displayed by Wotan, is the same and unique lance, shaft, or holy pike, kept as sacred in all populaces from the most remote antiquity. Indeed, it is unquestionable that only with the weapon of Eros, grasped by the Divine Mother Kundalini during the sacred coitus, can we radically eliminate one by one all of those tenebrous entities that personify our psychological defects and that in their conjunction characterize the animal ego. Chapter 37. Egyptian Confession. After having created to Soma Heliacon in the forge of the Cyclops, sex, I had then to pass through a time of profound reflections. Opportunely, it is good to clarify that the superior emotion, the mind of the Gnostic ascetic and the conscious will are found contained inside the golden body of the solar human, as within a holy cup. It is not irrelevant to emphasize that the second birth becomes a transcendental fact after one has become dressed with the wedding garment of the soul in the Dantesque ninth circle. Within the residence of love, I found other brothers and sisters who had also intensely worked in the flaming forge of Vulcan, sex. All of them were gloriously shining amidst the indescribable enchantments of Good Friday. By all means it stands out that I am mystically talking about the temple of the twice-born. This is a divine humanity, extraordinary people from various nations, populaces and tongues. Inside that alla lucas, I came to comprehend in an integral way the transcendental idea that the human being must also be carnally one with God. It is unquestionable that the human creature can only intimately self-realize by delivering his body to God. Even though it seems paradoxical, it is ostensible that not all the twice-born have dissolved their I. After the second birth, I was intensely instructed in the temple. I comprehended at that time that I needed to die from moment to moment, if I did not want to convert myself into a Hannesmussen with a double center of gravity. Previously, in my former books, I explained that the Hannesmussen are cosmic failures, abortions of the Divine Mother Kundalini. They are lost cases. It is indispensable and urgent to radically die within our own person, in the flesh, in the I, with the firm purpose of incarnating the potency of God within ourselves. We need to reconcile ourselves with the Supreme Maker so that he can recognize in the flesh his own creature. Light and dust must celebrate their nuptials. Thus, heaven and earth together become liberated with love. A new heaven is already prepared. Hence, in like manner, a new earth must be created, equal to him in beauty and magnificence. The exterior is just the projection of the interior. Therefore, whosoever is already very well dead and has God inside projects out of himself a paradise. Deep reflections touched my soul. I comprehended in depth and in integral way each one of my own psychological errors. O Mahalakshmi, Mahasarasvati, Isis, Adonia, Insaburta, Tonansan. Divine Mother Kundalini. Om. Santi. Santi. Without you, Divine Mother of mine, I could never have eliminated the red demons of Seth, those entities of darkness which personify our defects. One given day, the day and hour does not matter now, I was visited by Kether of the Hebrew Kabbalah, the Ancient of Days, my Father who is in secret, the hidden of the hidden, the pity of pities, the mercy of mercies. The Lord sat on his throne and said, "The way you are working is good, you are doing very well, you must continue with your work." Time passed by, and I was dying from moment to moment. To comprehend and to eliminate, that was my task. It is written with fiery coals in the great book of splendors that those who have died in themselves are welcome in the world of the dead. My case was not an exception to the funerary rule. Thus, dressed with that funerary attire that I am always accustomed to using after every reincarnation, I then joyfully lived within the occult abode. I want to finish this present chapter by transcribing and even briefly commenting on each one of the verses of the Egyptian Confession. Papyrus Nebseni. 1. Hail, thou, spirit whose strides are long, who comest forth from a new Heliopolis, I have not committed iniquity. It is obvious that the one who indeed was capable of evil-disposed deeds ceased to exist. Only the ego commits such actions. Yet, the being of the defunct one who still has his physical body alive will never perform anything evil. 2. Hail, thou, spirit who art embraced by burning fire, who comest forth from Kuraha, I have not behaved with violence. By all means it stands out with complete meridian clarity that violence is multifaceted. The ego breaks laws, wounds honor, profanes, violates the mind of others, smashes, crumples, ruins, intimidates the neighbor, etc. Yet, the being respects the free will of our neighbors, he is always serene and appeased. 3. Hail, thou, spirit who sniffs divine breath, who comest forth from Kemenu. Hermopolis, my heart detests brutality. Indeed, the ego is brute, torpid, incapable, a friend of lewdness, bestial by nature and by animal instinct. Yet, the being is distinct, refined, wise, capable, divine, sweet, severe, etc. 4. Hail, thou, spirit who eatest over the shades of the dead, who comest forth from Kurt, the place where the Nile riseth, I have not stolen. The ego pleases itself with thievery, robbery, pillage, ravishment, abduction, fraud, swindle, deprivation, with borrowing and not restoring, with abusing the trust of others, and thus keeping what is not his own, with exploiting the neighbor, with dedicating himself to peculation, etc. Yet, the being enjoys when giving and even when renouncing to the fruits of his actions. He is serviceable, unselfish, charitable, philanthropic, altruistic, etc., etc., etc. 5. Hail, thou, spirit who comest forth from Restau, whose limbs come rotten and emit a stench. I have not slain man or woman. Assassination is without any doubt the most great act of corruption that exists in the world. A neighbor's life is not only extinguished or put out by revolvers, gas, knives, poisons, stones, sticks, gallows, etc., 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 but also we annihilate the life of our fellow men with hard words, violent eyesight, acts of ingratitude, infidelity, treason, guffaws, etc. Deceased fathers and mothers from many families could still be alive if their children would not have taken their existence by means of their evil deeds. Multitudes of husbands and wives could still be breathing under the light of the sun if their spouses would have allowed them to do so. Remember that the human being kills what he or she loves the most. Any moral grief can make us sick and take us to the sepulchre. Every sickness has psychic causes. 6. Hail, thou, spirit, who comest forth from heaven as a double lion god, I have not made light the bushel. The ego arbitrarily alters the weight of the provisions. 7. Hail, thou, spirit, whose 2 eyes wound like daggers, who comest forth from Secum, Litopolis, I have not acted deceitfully. The being will never commit such a crime. 8. Hail, thou, spirit, of the flaming mask, who slowly comest forth as thou goest back, I have not stolen the property of the gods. The ego pleases itself when pillaging the sepulchres of the great initiates, when profaning the sacred tombs, when vandalizing the venerated relics, when taking out the mummies from their abodes, when searching within the entrails of the earth for holy things in order to profane them. 9. Hail, thou, spirit, who comest forth from Sutenhennen, Heracleopolis, who crushes and tortures the bones, I have not told lies. The ego pleases itself with falsehood, deception, falsity, hypocrisy, vanity, error, fiction, with pretending, etc. Yet, the being is different. He never lies, always utters the truth no matter what the cost might be. 10. Hail, thou, spirit, who makest the flame to wax strong, who comest forth from Memphis, I have not carried away my fellow men's food. The ego pleases itself when separating the food of his fellow men, when he illicitly negotiates with the neighbor's food, when rationing, when subtracting even a little of what does not belong to him, when making the populace or groups of people to starve, when keeping provisions or when raising the price of them, thus taking from them absurd unearned increments, when plundering, stealing, when denying a piece of bread to the hungry one, etc., etc., etc. 11. Hail, thou, spirit, who comest forth from Amenti, divinity who comest forth from the 2 sources of the Nile, I have not uttered evil words. The ego pleases itself with calumny, with slander, with gossip, with backbiting, with discrediting others, with denigration, defamation, etc. Yet, the being prefers to be silent rather than profaning the word. 12. Hail, thou, spirit, who comest forth from the region of the lakes and whose teeth shine. Like the sun, I have attacked no man. The ego is an aggravator. It is caustic, ironic, mordant, insulting, sarcastic by nature. It likes to attack, to assault, to assail. It hurts with the subtle smile of Socrates and kills with the thundering guffaw of Aristophanes. Yet, within the always serene being, sweetness and severity are always equilibrated. 13. Hail, thou, spirit, who comest forth from the house of slaughter and who, voracious, does consume the victim's blood. I have not slain the beasts, which are the property of the temples. These are animals which are consecrated to divinity. However, the ego harms and assassinates the creatures dedicated to the Eternal One. In contrast, the being only knows how to bless and love. The being only knows how to make all things perfect. 14. Hail, thou, spirit, who dost consume the entrails of sinners, who comest forth from the 30 judges' chamber. I have not acted deceitfully. The ego pleases itself when usurping, expropriating, misapplying, pilfering, frustrating, disturbing, destroying, etc. 15. Hail, thou, Lord of universal order, who comest forth from the hail of truth and justice. I have not pillaged the lands which have been plowed. The land belongs to the one who sows it. The laborer labors, sweats, cultivates the land. However, the powerful ones, the landholders, retain, absorb the farmlands. This is how the ego is. 16. Hail, thou, spirit, who goest backwards, who comest forth from Bubastis. I have never pried behind doors to make mischief. The ego is curious and perverse by nature and instinct. People say that fences, ramparts, or walls have ears, and it is ostensible that so do doors. The ego enjoys when intruding into the personal things of the neighbor. Mephistopheles or Satan is always an intruder, a rumormonger, a meddler. 17. Hail, thou, spirit, Adi, who comest forth from Heliopolis. I have never sinned by uttering words in excess. The ego is a charlatan, jabberer, chatterer, prattler. It is garrulous, loquacious, gabby, talkative, babbling, etc. Yet, the being utters strictly what is indispensable. He never plays with the word. 18. Hail, thou, spirit Tadaf, who comest from Adi. I have never uttered accursed words when I was adversely affected. The ego likes to swear, denigrate, abominate, detract, etc. Yet, the being only knows how to bless, love, and forgive. 19. Hail, thou, spirit Wamenti, who comest forth from the caves of torture. I have never committed adultery. The ego is perverted, corrupt, vicious, false. It enjoys when justifying adultery, when making it sublime. The ego endows adultery with ineffable, subtle excuses. It gives to itself the luxury of hiding, concealing adultery from itself and from others. The ego decorates, adorns adultery with legitimate norms and divorce papers. He legalizes adultery through new nuptial ceremonies. Whosoever lusts after the spouse of the neighbor is, as a fact, an adulterer, even if this person never copulates with the coveted one. Indeed, I tell you that within the subconscious depths of the most chaste people adultery disguises itself with multiple faces. 20. Hail, thou, spirit, who lookest upon the offerings brought unto thee, who comest forth from Ansu. I have never, in society, committed any sin against chastity. Absolute chastity is only possible when the ego is very well dead. Many anchorites who in this physical world reached purity, a soul's virginity, chastity, candor, etc., failed, faltered when they were submitted to sexual ordeals within the supersensible worlds. They fell as Amfortas, the king of the Grail, when amidst the impure arms of Kundry, Gundrigia, that impetuous blonde woman whom they called Herodias. 21. Hail, thou, spirit, chief of ancient gods, who comest forth from Nehatu. I have never terrorized people. The ego likes to terrorize, to frighten, to scare, to intimidate others, to threaten them, to morally degrade the neighbor, to debase, to bring people down, to terrify them, etc. Sometimes business stores send to its clients who have past due bills very gentle reminders, yet they are always threatening reminders. 22. Hail, thou, spirit destroyer, who comest forth from Koi. I have never encroached upon times and seasons. The ego arbitrarily changes the timetable and alters the calendar. It is worthy to remember the authentic order of the 7 days of the week: Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. The pseudo-sapient ignoramuses altered this order. 23. Hail, thou, spirit, who orderest speech of psalmody, who comest forth from Urit, I have not been a man of anger. The ego is always predisposed to be dragged by anger, to be with wrath, rage, madness, irritability, fury, exasperation, frenzy, etc. 24. Hail, thou, spirit, who comest forth from the lake of Hecate having the shape of a child, I have not made myself deaf to the words of justice. The being loves always equity, righteousness. He is impartial, upright, just. He wants legality, that which is legitimate. He cultivates virtue and sanctity. He is precise in all things, faultless, complete. He longs for precision, punctuality. On the other hand, the ego always tries to justify and to excuse its own crimes. It is never punctual. It has a fervor for subornation. It is accustomed to bribing and corrupting the tribunals of human justice. 25. Hail, thou, spirit, who comest forth for months, thou with sharp speech, I have not stirred up strife. The ego enjoys grievance, discord, disputes, quarrels, altercations, wranglings. It is a friend of revolts, conflicts, grudges, disputes, litigation, discussions, complaints, wars, etc. By antithesis, we assert that the being is distinct. He loves peace, serenity. He is an enemy of harsh words. He abhors altercations, squabbles. He says what he has to say and afterwards he keeps silence, allowing his interlocutors complete liberty to think, to accept or reject. Thereafter, he withdraws. 26. Hail, thou, spirit of Busti, who comest forth from the mysteries, I have made no man to weep. The weeping of the oppressed ones tall upon the powerful ones as a ray of vengeance. The ego promotes moans and grieving everywhere. The initiate, very well dead, although with his physical body alive, leaves gleams of light and happiness wherever he passes through. 27. Hail, thou, spirit, whose face is turned backwards, who comest forth from thy hidden cavern, I have not committed acts against nature, or acts of sexual impurity by lying down with men. The infrasexual people from Lilith, homosexuals, pederasts, lesbians, perverted ones, etc., are degenerated seeds, lost cases, subjects who in no way can attain self-realization. They shall be cast out into outer darkness, where only weeping and the gnashing of teeth are heard. 28. Hail, thou, spirit with his leg in fire, who comest forth from Akeku, I have never lost my patience and become angry. Restlessness, uneasiness, the lack of patience and serenity are a hindrance, obstacle, impediment for the esoteric work in the intimate self-realization of the being. The I is impatient, restless by nature. It has always the tendency to become enraged, angry, furious, fiery, irritated, upset. The ego does not know how to wait, therefore, it is unquestionable that it fails. 29. Hail, thou, spirit, Kenemti, who comest forth from Kenemet, I have never cursed any man. It is obvious that the initiate is very well dead because he dissolved the I, therefore, he is only the being within himself, and since the being is of a divine nature, it is ostensible that he is incapable of calumniating the neighbor. The being does not offend anyone. He is perfect in thought, word, and action. The ego hurts, abuses, damages, insults, mistreats, aggravates, etc. 30. Hail, thou, spirit, who bringest in thy hands thine offering, who comest forth from Sais, I have never acted with violence. The ego likes to be involved in riots, disorders, tumults, turmoil, quarrels, scuffles, fisticuffs, altercations, arguments, etc. 31. Hail, thou, spirit with multiple faces, who comest forth from the city of Chephet, I have not acted or judged hastily. The I has the marked tendency of becoming impetuous, hasty, inconsiderate, a scatterbrain, imprudent, foolhardy, thoughtless. It desires to run, to walk hastily. It is not cautious. The being is very different. He is profound, reflective, prudent, patient, serene, etc. 32. Hail, thou, spirit endowed with cunning, who comest forth for month, I have never disrespected the gods. Presently, During this tenebrous cycle of Kali Yuga, people mock the holy gods, Prajapatis, or biblical Elohim. The multitudes of the future sixth great root race will again venerate the ineffable ones. 33. Hail, thou, Spirit, Lord of two horns, who comest forth from Seshu, I have never multiplied my speech overmuch. Observe the charlatans of the different radio stations. This is how the eye is, always a blabbermouth. 34. Hail, thou, Spirit, Nefertum, who comest forth from Memphis, I have never acted with deceit, I have not worked wickedness. Fraud has many colors of a psychological type. Many brides feel themselves deceived, husbands betrayed, fathers and mothers abandoned or morally wounded by their children. The employee feels unjustly fired from his job. The child feels he did not receive the promised gift. The esoteric group feels abandoned by its guide, etc., etc., etc. The eye likes to deceive, to pervert, to corrupt, to infect everything it touches. 35. Hail, thou, Spirit, Tum Sep, who comest forth from Jeddu, I have never uttered curses on the king. The chiefs of all nations are the vehicles of karma, therefore we must not damn them. 36. Hail, thou, Spirit, whose heart doth labor, who comest forth from Teddy, I have never fouled the waters. It would be the breaking point of absurdity to think that an initiate with the ego very well dead would commit the crime of dumping garbage or filthy things into the lakes or rivers. However, it is obvious that the eye enjoys such crimes. It delights in doing evil. It does not feel compassion for all creatures. The ego does not want to understand that when the liquid element, water, is infected, as a fact, he is damaging everything that is with life. 37. Hail, thou, Ahi, who comest forth from heaven, I have never made haughty my voice. The ego is lofty, haughty, proud, arrogant, imperious, contemptuous, disdainful. It is accustomed, nonetheless, to hide its pride under the tunic of Aristippus, a vesture filled with holes and patches. The ego even gives to himself the luxury of uttering with fake meekness and pietistic poses, yet, through the holes of its clothing its vanity is shown. 38. Hail, thou, Spirit, who givest commands to the initiates, I have never cursed the gods. Perverse people abominate and denigrate the gods, angels, or devas. 39. Hail, thou, Neheb-Nefert, who comest forth from the lake, I have never behaved with impertinence nor insolence. Impertinence and insolence are based on the lack of humbleness and patience. The ego is always offensive, irreverent, an inopportune one, nonsensical, gross, hasty, torpid. 40. Hail, thou, Neheb-Kau, who comest forth from the city, I have never sought to make myself unduly distinguished. The ego wants to rise, to climb to the top of the ladder, so that he then can boast of himself, to show that he is somebody in life, etc. The I is a pretender, mischief-maker, prankster, troublemaker, trickster, friend of plot and conspiracy, sly, obscure, dangerous. 41. Hail, thou, Spirit, whose head is holy, who comest forth from thy cavern, I have not increased my wealth through illicit ways. The ego lives through the business of more. The accumulative process of the I is indeed horrifying. To get more money, it does not matter how, could be even through swindling, cheating, deceiving, tricking, trapping, defrauding. Mephistopheles is a swindler, a perverse, evil one. This is how Satan, the myself, has always been. 42. Hail, thou, Spirit, who bringest thine own arm cut, who comest forth from the underworld, I have never scorned or treated with contempt the gods of my town. Those ineffable deities, angels, protectors of populations, familial spirits, etc., deserve our admiration and respect. They are the Penyati gods from ancient times. Each village, town, metropolis, or suburb has its own spiritual rector, its Prajapati. A family does not exist without its own spiritual regent. The ego despises such pastors of the soul. Chapter 38. The Bellowing Beast. Before the second Transalpine catastrophe, which fundamentally altered the aspect of the terrestrial crust, an old continent that now remains submerged within the boisterous waters of the Atlantic Ocean existed. I am emphatically referring to Atlantis. Innumerable traditions abound everywhere in regards to it. Behold, or not, the Atlantean foreign names, or names of barbarian languages, as those Cretan Greeks used to say who wanted to kill Anaxagoras when he dared to say that the sun was a bit bigger than half of Peloponnesus. These names, I say, were translated into the Egyptian language by the Sapphic priests, and restored into their primary significance by Plato the Divine, in order to later marvelously pour them into the language of Attica. Behold the diamantine thread of the millenary tradition, from the Sapphic priests to Solon, and then continuing with the two Christians and the master Plato. Behold, I tell you, the extraordinary descriptions of botany, geography, zoology, mineralogy, politics, religion, customs, etc., which come from the Atlanteans. Behold as well with eyes of a rebel eagle the veiled allusions to the first divine kings of such an pre-delugian old continent, divine kings who simultaneously have many references in Mediterranean paganism and in very ancient sacred texts from the Oriental world. Behold those astonishing notes of Diodorus Siculus, which for us are still material for studying, that give a detailed account of those sublime kings. Behold, at last, and this is what is most interesting, the similar sacrifice of the sacred cow, characteristics of Brahmins, Hebrews, Mohammedans, the European Gentiles, and thousands of other populaces. It is unquestionable that our most celebrated and indestructible Taurian circus is in its depth nothing but a very ancient ancestral survival from that Atlantean sacrificial festivity, whose description is still found in many archaic secret books. There are in reality many existing legends in the world about the bulls that were released in the Temple of Neptune. These animals were not brutally subdued with barbed darts and swords as in these times, but with ropes and other ingenious arts of classic tauromachy. Once the symbolic beast was defeated in the sacred bull ring, it was immolated in honor to the holy gods of Atlantis, gods who, as the very Neptune, had devolved from the primeval solar state, till converting themselves into a lunar type of people. The classic art of tauromachy is indeed something initiatic, and it is related with the mysterious worship of the sacred cow. Behold, the Atlantean bull ring from the Temple of Neptune and the present one. Indeed, they are nothing but a living zodiac, in which the honorable public as starry constellations are seated. The initiator or hierophant is the master, the walking batterieros are the companions, and the mounted bullfighters are the beginners. Therefore, the beginners ride on the horse, in other words, with all the ballast over their untamed body, which always fall dead in hard battle. The companions already feel superior since they are putting the banderias or the lances into the wild bull, into the animal ego. In other words, they are already, as Arjuna from the Bhagavad Gita, the persecutors of the secret enemy. The master, as the god Krishna. From that old poem, with the cape of his hierarchy, which signifies the dominion of Maya, is the one who grasps with his dexterous hand the flaming sword of willpower. He becomes not the persecutor, but the killer of the eye, or the beast, a horrifying, roaring monster, which was also seen in Camelot, Camelot, or Kamaloka by the very King Artus, supreme chief of the illustrious knights of the Round Table. Therefore, the resplendent Atlantean tauromachy is a profoundly significant royal art, since it teaches us through its brilliant symbolism the hard battle which must conduce us to the dissolution of the eye. Any retrospective glance related with taurine esotericism can indubitably conduce us to mystic discoveries of a transcendental order. As a fact of the present actuality, it is worthy to cite the profound love which the torero feels for the Virgin. It is ostensible that he totally delivers himself to her before appearing with his sparkling suit in the bull ring. This reminds us of the Isiac mysteries, the terrible sacrifice of the sacred cow and the archaic worships of I.O., whose origins have become solemn on our planet Earth since the dawn of life. It is outstanding, clear, and defined that indeed, only 10 Devi Kundalini, the sacred cow, the Divine Mother, possesses the serpentine magical power that permits us to reduce the animal ego, the terrible bull, the roaring beast within the ring of existence, into cosmic dust. Parsifal, the torero of the astral plane, after the hard battle in the marvelous ring of life, converted himself, as a fact and by his own right, into the innocent chaste one of the Wagnerian drama, who was announced by the voice of the silence amidst the exquisite splendors of the Holy Grail. Chapter 39. The Three Traitors. And I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. For they are the spirits of devils, working miracles, which go forth unto the kings of the earth and of the whole world, to gather them to the battle of that great day of God Almighty. Revelations 16 verses 13-14. It is written with ardent fiery coals in the marvelous book of all splendors that these are the 3 traitors who assassinated Hiram, or better if we say Chiram Osiris, the intimate god of every man who comes into the world. We must search with infinite yearnings within each one of us for these 3 assassins of the secret master, so that, finally, on a given day, the date, day, and hour does not matter, we will exclaim with all of the strength of our soul, "The king is dead, hail to the king." It is ostensible that the first treacherous one is indeed the loathsome demon of desire. It is unquestionable that the second disloyal one is the horrifying demon of the mind. It is evident, clear, and definitive that the third traitor is the vile demon of evil will. Judas is the first. He is the one who sells the secret Christ for 30 silver coins. Pilate is the second. He always washes his hands and declares himself innocent. He never recognizes himself as guilty. Caiaphas is the third. He never does the will of the Father. He abhorred the Lord and still is abhorring him. The origin of these 3 evil ones is indeed extremely tenebrous. It is indubitable that they are an outcome of the frightful perversion of the 3 gunas. Sattva is the guna of universal harmony. Reyes is the guna of emotion. Tamas is the guna of inertia. Any illuminated hierophant who studies the Akashic records of nature will verify by himself the transcendental fact of the absolute equilibrium of the 3 gunas of mystery during the profound night of the great pralaya. When these 3 gunas become unbalanced on the plates of the cosmic scale, then the dawn of the new day begins. Krishna, that renowned master who accomplished in a 4-time a gigantic mission in the sacred land of the Vedas, when emphatically referring to the 3 gunas of ancient wisdom, stated in the Bhagavad Gita, "When a soul departeth, fixed in sattva, it goeth to the sphere perfect and pure of those devotees who worship the most excellent. If it departeth in set habitude of reyes, it shall pass into the world of people tied to action, and, if it dies in hardened tamas, that blinded soul is born anew in some unlighted womb among irrational beings. Those of sattva temperament rise ever higher to the superior spheres of the universe. Those of reyes take a mid-place. They are reborn in a new human body immediately intermediately, without giving to themselves the luxury of some vacations in the ineffable regions. The darkened souls of tamas sink back to lower deeps, loaded with witlessness. They submerge themselves into the interior of the earth. They enter into the submerged mineral kingdom in order to retrograde by devolving in time. They descend through the animal, plant, and mineral steps. Afterwards, they re-emerge in the sun's light in order to restart a new type of evolving ascent, which has to recommence in the hard rock. Thus, the glorious Lord took the floor again in order to state the following: "When at all gateways of the body shines the lamp of knowledge, then may one see well sattva settled in. Where longing is, and ardor, and unrest, impulse to strive and gain, and avarice, those spring from reyes oberata. Ingrained. And where darkness and dullness, sloth and stupor are, 'tis tamas hath caused them, O Countia." The soul, thus passing forth from the 3 gunas whereby arise all bodies, overcomes birth, death, sorrow, and age, becomes immortal, and drinketh deep the undying wine of Amrit. Kundalini Yoga teaches in a brilliant way that the Bhujanjini or serpentine power is found coiled 3.5 times inside the coccygeal chakra. The 3 tails represent the 3 gunas of Prakriti, sattva, reyes, and tamas. It is an axiom of the occult wisdom that the remnant middle tail represents Vakritis, the modification of Prakriti, the eternal feminine. The Gospel of the Lord Buddha states, "The 3 daughters of Mara, the 3 perverted gunas, tempted the Bodhisattva, but he paid no attention to them, and when Mara saw that he could kindle no desire in the heart of the victorious Srajyana, he ordered all the evil spirits at his command to attack him and overawe the great Muni. But the Blessed One watched them as one would watch the harmless games of children. All the fierce hatred of the evil spirits was of no avail. The flames of hell became wholesome breezes of perfume, and the angry thunderbolts were changed into lotus blossoms. When Mara, the dragon of darkness, saw this, he fled away with his army from the Bodhi tree, whilst from above a rain of heavenly flowers fell, and voices of good spirits were heard. Behold the great Muni, his heart unmoved by hatred. The wicked Mara's host, the red devils who constitute the famous Eye, against him did not prevail. Pure is he and wise, loving and full of mercy. As the rays of the sun drown the darkness of the world, so he who perseveres in his search will find the truth, and the truth will enlighten him. The former verses were some among the sacred gospel of our Lord Buddha. Many centuries after, the divine rabbi of Galilee exclaims with the whole strength of his soul, "And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." John 8 verse 32. God is a spirit, states the Christian gospel, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. John 4 verse 24. Howbeit when he, the Spirit of truth, is come, he will guide you into all truth, for he shall not speak of himself, but whatsoever he shall hear, that shall he speak, and he will show you things to come. John 16 verse 13. It is written with characters of ardent fire that only by dying within ourselves can we incarnate the Spirit of truth. Whosoever knows, the word gives power to. No one has uttered it, no one will utter it, except the one who has incarnated it. Siddhartha, the Buddha, is the one who accomplishes what he promises to himself, as does Parsifal of the Wagnerian drama, who courageously grasps the lance of Eros in order to annihilate first the demons of Seth, the ego, and thereafter, the three furies who dwell in terrible abysses of Acheron. Gautama was indeed a magician of tantric initiation, who practiced intensely the Sahaja Maithuna, and who skillfully handled the lance with singular mastery. Chapter 40. Serenity and Patience. Each one of us knew very well that the dissolution of the ego corresponds to the esoteric work in the sinister abysses of Acheron. It is ostensible that we, the brethren of the secret order, were very well dead. However, we wanted to enter into a superior work. All of us were suffering, filled with intimate longings. We wanted to reduce into cosmic dust those three classic furies that Dante saw within the infernal abysses. We were told that we must wait with infinite patience for the abbot of the monastery. But, evidently, the passing hours were for us very long and boring. Certainly, the venerable abbot did not seem to be in any hurry whatsoever. It was something unusual and unexpected to see those adepts of the White Lodge extremely weary, annoyed and ill-humored. Some of those very respectable brethren were moving, here, there and everywhere, complaining because of the singular delay of the superior. There exists events in life that are surprising, and one of these is the astonishing entrance of the abbot into the temple. All the brethren of our order were astonished, overwhelmed, since they had already lost all hope of seeing the master. Before the sacred confraternity, the venerable one spoke and said, "All of you brethren are lacking two virtues that this brother has." He said this while he was pointing at me with his index finger. Following, in a simultaneously sweet and imperative way, he commanded me, saying, "You, brother, tell them which are these two virtues." "There is the need to know how to be patient, and there is the need to know how to be serene," I exclaimed with a slow and clear voice. "Did you realize this? Are you convinced of this?" broke forth the abbot. All of them, simultaneously frightened and amazed, chose to keep a tremendous silence. It is indubitable that all the brethren had then to be deferred for the superior work, because only my insignificant person became victorious in the difficult ordeal. Much later in time, I had to appear before a brotherhood of another monastery of the White Fraternity, in order to receive orders and to sign some important documents. I was going to work in the atomic lunar infernos, disintegrating the three daughters of Mara. Thus, it is ostensible that for such a motive, I should be, first of all, instructed and admonished. It is not irrelevant to emphasize a transcendental fact, such as a finished work within the submerged mineral kingdom of the planet Earth. It is obvious that within that Tartarus, I had reduced the animal ego into cosmic dust. However, it is unquestionable that the superior work within the lunar abysses, in order to eliminate the 3 traitors of Chiromosiris, undoubtedly would be very difficult. I was warned and advised with the following words: "You must be very careful of lunar coldness," as if they were trying to say, "Do not abandon sexual magic, since you have now the eye very well dead, yet, if you commit the mistake of falling again into animal generation, then, your ego will resurrect little by little." I was taken by my divine augoids into the lunar world, or astral world, while in the state of Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Then, I was wisely advised. My soul was touched in its more intimate depths when I found there the elder of the Temple of the Twice-Born. Our beloved rector, this sacred elder, certainly seemed to have all of the characteristics of a lemon, but it is ostensible that he irradiated infinite love. I comprehended that in order to have the right to ascend into the lunar heaven, superior astral, I should first descend into the Selenian infernos, inferior astral, and courageously confront the 3 furies. Just let Medusa come, then we shall turn him into stone. The 3 furies cry, "We should have punished Theseus' assault." When I wanted to rise upon the symbolic ladder of Jacob, the sacred elder of the temple pulled out from the tree of knowledge, or the tree of the science of good and evil, a delectable branch that he made me smell. That fragrance was nirvanic, paradisiacal. "You must smell this branch in order for you to rise," such were the words of the adept. We must nourish ourselves with the delectable fragrance of the tree of science of good and evil, but not to eat it. This is the law. I initiated my work by disintegrating Judas, the demon of desire, the theosophical Kama Rupa, in the abyss of Selene. It is lamentable that many ignorant people confuse this first traitor with the sidereal or astral body that the twice-born built in the fiery forge of Vulcan. The scorpion head goddess, the 3rd cosmic aspect of my divine mother Kundalini, while walking inside of that passionate monster, disguised as a mysterious scorpion, made to rain upon him her cup of destruction. Thus, the gods who assisted me rent apart the chest of the first fury without any kind of mercy. The frightfully divine lion head goddess immobilized its limbs. She removed from him the whole bestial force that he possessed. It is not irrelevant to say with complete assertion and great emphasis that at good time and thanks to the direct help of my divine mother Kundalini, the horrifying demon of desire, the evil Judas was reduced to ashes. Afterwards, a little bit later, I had to continue my work with the disquieting demon of the mind that brings us too much bitterness, the abominable pilot of all times. That vile, classic fury had obviously originated certain confusions in the intellect of notable investigating occultists. It is ostensible that some very serious authors confused the interior pilot of each one of us with the authentic and legitimate mental body that the twice-born patiently built in the forge of the Cyclops. Get thee hence, then, O demon of the mind, thou unto whom Osiris, the inner being of each human being, feels horror. Get away from my boat blown by propitious winds. And I cried with a loud voice, as when a lion roars, calling to my divine mother Kundalini with all the strength of my soul, and 7 thunders uttered my voice. The gods from the vast land are subjugated. Away from me, loathsome pilot, the god, lord of the region of the dead, detests thee. Thus, that sinister fury in its terrifying dusk took the appearance of a child. A vain shadow slowly losing its figure, a monster slowly attaining beauty. It loses its original size, it is reduced into a point, then it disappears forever. Annihilation, a terrible word that was the final doom of that fatal pilot who was tormenting me. Thereafter, I continued my work by attacking Caiaphas, the 3rd traitor, the most detestable of all furies. I saw the demon of evil while climbing up all the stairs of my own abode. He possessed a Caesar-like aspect. Unfortunately, it was not this wretched one's fault. I, myself, had created it, and the breaking point was that I even committed the mistake of fortifying it with tyrannical atoms when I was named Julius Caesar in Rome. Glorious epochs of the Roman eagle. In that age I established the scenario for the people of the 4th subrace of the Aryan race. I was assassinated by the evil Brutus and his henchmen. What profound meditations! O God of mine! Ah! I say to my own self, I must eliminate from my intimate nature this perverse rebel who has never wanted to obey the Father. May the gods furnish me with thy throne, O Ra. Furnish me likewise with thy glorious body. I travelleth over the paths of Ra at daybreak, to drive back the demon of evil who cometh in disguise behind a column of passionate flames. Thus, on a narrow and long corridor of the esoteric ordeals, he unexpectedly attacks me. Woe! 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 What would have become of me without the cosmic help of my divine mother Kundalini? Venus, Adonia, in Subertha, Re, Iris, holding with her dexterous hand the lance of Eros, combated against the horrible beast. Not even the Amazon Camille with her long hair blown by the wind, blonde as the gold, advancing as Diana to the encounter of her enemies, could have ever competed against the beauty of my mother. Certainly, the third Fury died after receiving various thrusts with the lance in her body. None of the Furies equaled her horrible appearance. None of them had as many serpents as she was having in her mane. Even these very sisters were afraid of her. This disgraceful one was carrying in her hands all the Gorgonian venoms of the Infernos. I could verify with complete astonishing clarity the whole death process of the three Furies. It is unquestionable that they were passing through all of the magical transformations, as recited by Ovid. If in the beginning they were gigantic and horrible, as the monster Polyphemus from the damned land, who implacably was devouring the companions of Ulysses, in the end, before the arrival of their sovereign death, they were having the aspects of newborn children. Now, those shadows have died, they distilled within my interior the fragrance of life, a certain percentage of my consciousness that was bottled up within them. Chapter 41. The Queen of the Jinns. With the spear in its rest, the strong breastplate about the chest, the menacing body upon the saddle, the hero threatens in a barbaric, furious gesture. With the eyes fixed, the countenance livid, the face serene, and with a forced spirit, the knight brandishes the flashing iron. While girdled amidst the dust which they raised, the land around is frightened with their encounter. In a confused revolt, the knight is fighting the battle for his lady. All the children of Satan are ardently infuriated with anger. The shredded chain mail, crude wounds martyrize the bodies. There is no yield, there is no calm, an unmovable barrier. Their crossed irons bristle 1,000 times continuously. They wound each other, they wound themselves again and despise death. They fly into a rage, and they grow stronger. The eternal lady, the spiritual soul, Buddhi, always demands from her knight all types of unbelievable prodigies of sacrifice and boldness. She, the divine perfect spouse, is Guinevere, the queen of the Jinn knights, the one who poured wine for Lancelot. This was a delicious wine of transcendental spirituality within the initiatic cups of Sukra and Manti. In sum, these cups are none other than the Holy Grail in its symbolic meaning as the chalice of the supreme beverage, or initiatic nectar of the holy gods. Fortunately, Cerberus, the dog, the sexual instinct, pulls the leash that helps the knight in his tremendous adventure. Hercules seized the three-headed dog Cerberus, and in spite of its barking, he tied it by its collar and took it out from within the Tartarus. Horrible is the cave where Cerberus, who is a prodigy of terror, howls. With its barking, its three enormous flat-nosed heads, and with serpents writhing on its neck, Cerberus fills all the defunct ones with terror. Cerberus, the guide dog, gratefully conduces the knight, who is capable of taking it from within the tortures of hell, along the path of the razor's edge. Cerberus, sunken within the atomic infernos of the human being, becomes the best guide for the initiate, when emancipated. He is a marvelous dog, sexual libido, pulling the oriental chain of the adept who is in search of his beloved one. Fortunate is the knight who after the difficult battle celebrates his betrothal with the Queen of the Jinns. It is written with golden letters in the book of life that the flame of Prajna, the being, is burning within Buddhi, as within a fine and transparent glass of alabaster. Adorable spirit lady, eternal adorable spouse, ideal woman, Buddhic enchantment of love, receive me with gracious honor, as the serf, the slave that I am for you. I know, beloved of mine, that I am not worthy of you. Yet, divine lady, I do not dare to ask anything of you, only that you may allow me to give you my obedient service, so that, with all that which is in me, I will serve you as a loyal vassal. Behold, I am surrendering to you. Thus, with all of my eagerness and zealousness, I deliver myself to your free will entirely. The divine ones and humans know very well that the Lord of Perfection, the Theosophical Atman, has two souls, you and me. Buddhi and superior manas, or causal. The few who have become sages in the world do not ignore that you are my adored one and that I am your adorer. Is it the light of the day that illuminates me, or the remembrance of your presence? Wherever I place my sight, the world seems to me filled with your image. Upon the sun's beam, which vacillates in the water and plays amidst the leaves, I do not see anything but the resemblance of your eyes. What is the consistency of this change that my being has altered and that has made variable the aspect of the universe? I will not search for any remedy for your trials. Thus, I submit myself to all trials that you impose upon me. I am subject to you, and you are my queen. I proclaim it in a loud voice, and I glorify myself in it. Indeed, to die for you has to be the supreme joy. One night of indisputable delights, I had the joy of finding my beloved one in a secret spot on a mountain. The chariot of my fiancé was slowly advancing on the solitary path. The legend of the century states that the Marquise of Beaupré was parading herself on a chariot of a singular beauty that was made of pure porcelain. However, the triumphal chariot of my adorable Walkyria was similar to another chariot, which in the times of Rococo the wife of the Duke of Clermont used to ride in. It was a splendid chariot with a trunk of 6 horses that were all wearing horseshoes of silver. As well, the wheels and carriage were made of the same metal. Thou hast ravished my heart, my sister, my spouse. Thou hast ravished my heart with one of thine eyes, with one chain of thy neck. How fair is thy love, my sister, my spouse! How much better is thy love than wine, and the smell of thine ointments than all spices. Thy lips, O my spouse, drop as the honeycomb. Honey and milk are under thy tongue, and the smell of thy garments is like the smell of Lebanon. A garden enclosed is my sister, my spouse. A spring shut up, a fountain sealed. Thy plants are an orchard of pomegranates, with pleasant fruits, camphire, with spikenard and saffron, calamus and cinnamon, with all trees of frankincense, myrrh and aloes, with all the chief spices, a fountain of gardens, a well of living waters and streams from Lebanon. Read the Song of Songs, Old Testament, Bible. The triumphal chariot of my beloved one stopped before a fortress of flaming porphyry, where the wealth and splendor of the East polishes the walls and coffers to the glaze of a looking glass. The splendid vehicle then parked before the dazzling bronze doors, where one stands motionless in fear of their remarkable majesty. Suddenly, the chariot was surrounded by a gentle cortege of distinguished gentlemen, princes and noblemen, beautiful ladies and delicate children. Someone gave me a sign. I obeyed the sign and advanced towards the chariot of love. Through the crystals of joy, I saw my Walkyria. How beautiful are thy feet with shoes, O prince's daughter! The joints of thy thighs are like jewels, the work of the hands of a cunning workman. Thy navel is like a round goblet, which wanteth not liquor. Thy belly is like an heap of wheat set about with lilies. Thy 2 breasts are like 2 young roes that are twins. Thy neck is as a tower of ivory. Thine eyes like the fish pools in Heshbon, by the gate of Bethrabim. Thy nose is as the tower of Lebanon, which looketh toward Damascus. Thine head upon thee is like Carmel, and the hair of thine head like purple. The king is held in the galleries. Read the Song of Songs, Old Testament, Bible. Dressed with the nuptial attire, the wedding garment of the soul, my fiancée had arrived in her resplendent chariot for our nuptials. To wed before the holy altar with my twin soul, the theosophical Buddhi. What a joy, O God! However, I was told that I had to wait a while. The virile provider of strength from above was delaying me, and I was suffering with infinite patience. I had to profoundly submerge myself into the sacred mysteries of Minna, the dreadful darkness of one love whose twin brother is death. I intensely worked within the super-obscurity of silence and the august secret of the wise. I had to wait for a time, times, and the half of a time. However, I was sighing for Guinevere, the queen of the Jinn Knights. One certain night, the shining stars in the infinite space appeared as if they had a new aspect. I was in Samadhi, far away from all mundane clamor. The door of my room was kept hermetically closed. Then, I celebrated the alchemical wedding. She penetrated within me, and I became lost within her. The solar logos, the sun of midnight, intensely shone in those blessed instants. I felt transformed in an integral way. The church of Laodicea, the famous chakra sahasrara, the lotus of 1,000 petals, the crown of the saints victoriously shone in my pineal gland. It brought legitimate happiness, permanent, to me. Then, in those moments of supreme beatitude, I indeed converted myself into an authentic and legitimate Brahmavid Varishta. The 1,000 yoga nadis of the Sahasrara granted me, as a fact, power over certain forces of nature. Buddhi, my Guinevere, in addition to putting the Shiva Shakti Tattva to the maximum of its vibratory activity, she also put the coronary Padma into a certain state of intensified mystical function. Then, I saw myself transformed into the messenger of the new age of Aquarius, teaching humanity a doctrine so new and revolutionary, nonetheless, so ancient. When I opened the door of my room, the diamond eye, the pineal gland, granted me the power of seeing my innumerable enemies. It is obvious that the diffusion of gnosis in its revolutionary way will increase the number of my adversaries each time. It is not irrelevant to state that after this great cosmic event, the nuptial ceremony was celebrated in the temple. Many people assisted to this festivity of love. Chapter 42. The Dragon of Darkness. After the alchemical wedding with that ineffable woman whose name is Guinevere, the queen of the Jinn Knights, I had then to courageously confront the Dragon of Darkness. I already stated in the former chapter that the delightful Walkyria always demands from her knight all types of unbelievable prodigies of sacrifice and boldness. Indeed, exceptions do not exist within the flaming fire of the universe. Even the adept ladies must fight in many battles, as epic Amazons, when indeed they yearn to betroth themselves with their beloved one, Buddhi. I thought that after the alchemical wedding with my beloved one, I would fully enter into a paradisiacal honeymoon. But I did not even vaguely suspect that hidden within the submerged dens of my subconsciousness was the leftist and tenebrous Mara, the father of the 3 classic furies. It is a gigantic monster with 7 infrahuman heads that bitterly personify the 7 capital sins. The Eye of the Eye is a horrifying engender of the abyss within which a good percentage of my consciousness was bottled up. When writing these lines, we cannot avoid remembering the apocalyptic verse which textually states the following: "And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil, and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels, the eyes which constitute the ego, were cast out with him." If the archangel Michael and his luminous angels from the divine light fought heroic battles against the dragon, why should I precisely be an exception to the general rule? Bless my soul, O God, and Hail Mary. Even Buddha Gautama Siddhartha himself had to fight frightful wars against the horrifying dragon Mara and his 3 loathsome furies. It is not irrelevant to transcribe here in this opportune moment a certain verse from the Buddhist gospel which literally states, "Mara, the dragon of darkness, uttered fear-inspiring threats and raised a hurricane so that the skies were darkened and the ocean roared and trembled. But the blessed one under the Bodhi tree, the fig tree symbol of sex, remained calm and feared not. The enlightened one knew that no harm could befall him." Ah! If the adept could exclaim, "I am not the dragon." If he could say, "That monster has nothing to do with me." However, it is clearly written in the book of all enigmas that Mara is the myself, the itself in the states of most profound infraconsciousness. Zeus governs the world from the Olympus, and many times the gods do what is not expected, yet, what is expected does not happen. Thus, the heavens give to the human affairs an unthinkable end. This is what has happened now. To fight against the dragon after the wedding? What a surprise, O God of mine! What has befallen is very strange. Smooth is the descent, and easy is the way into the infernal worlds. But it is not easy to retrace our steps and return. Here is where the difficult task and difficult trial lies. Some few sublime heroes indeed have succeeded to triumphantly return. Between those regions and our upper world of light, deep and impenetrable forests occupy the middle space, and the waters of the pale river, the Cocytus, with its sable waves, trace labyrinthic convolutions within that penumbra, whose mere image makes us shudder. So, the great beast frightfully howled, as when a lion roars in the potencies of darkness. Do quake with horror? In the immense Solano forest, in the splendid shade of the Taberno, two infuriated bulls with sharpened horns run one against the other in order to fight. The humble shepherds withdraw with fear, and as it is natural, the whole flock remains there immobile and mute with terror. The bulls with all of their strength become filled with terrible wounds, since, with all of their weight, they shove their sharpened horns inside their flesh. Thus, their necks and backs pour blood, and the whole profound forest trembles with their bellows. Likewise, the dragon of darkness and my longing soul were running one against the other, protecting themselves with their armor, and the abyss was filled with clamor. While contemplating the hard battle, Jupiter, the venerable father of divine ones and humans, has in equilibrium the two marvelous plates of the cosmic scale, and he places upon each one of them the destiny of the two combatants. Which one will succumb? In which part will death fall upon? The perfidious Mara feels himself invulnerable in his audacity. Hope and excess of hatred agitates him. The monster grasped the dreaded lance of Longinus with his sinister hand. In vain, he intended to hurt me 3 times, and desperately, he threw the holy spear against me. I evaded the strike of the hard pike. Immediately, in those instants, my divine mother Kundalini intervened. She took hold of this singular relic and mortally wounded that abominable engendering of hell. The red dragon then lost, little by little, his gigantic stature. He frightfully diminished himself. He reduced himself to a mathematical point and disappeared forever from the tenebrous den. The secrets of the old abyss are terrible. It is a gloomy and unlimited ocean where the primogenitor night and the chaos, grandparents of nature, heap perpetual anarchy in the midst of rumors of eternal wars, and which are sustained with the help of confusion. Heat, coldness, humidity, and drought are the 4 terrible champions who dispute superiority in this abyss. They lead their embryonic atoms to combat, which when gathering together around the ensign of their legions and when reunited into many tribes, lightly or heavily armed, being sharp, round, fast or slow, are moving innumerably in a swarm, like the sands of Barca or like the sands of the ardent beach of Cyrene, which are pulled in order to take their place in the battle of the winds and in order to serve as a ballast for their speedy wings. The atom which adheres to the major number of atoms is the one which momentarily dominates. Chaos is the one who governs as a referee, and his decisions increase disorder each time more, thanks to the one who reigns after him. It is ostensible that in those infernal worlds chance is directing everything. The horrifying abysmal engendering exhaled his last breath before this savage abyss, the cradle and sepulchre of nature, before this den, which is neither sea nor earth, neither air nor fire. It is formed by all the elements that in confusion mix themselves in their fertile causes, and that must always do combat in the same way. This is unless the creator Logos determines to form new worlds from these black materials, before this barbarian Tartarus. Then something unusual, marvelous, and extraordinary happened. That fraction of my consciousness that was previously bottled up within that abominable monster returned into the depths of my soul. Chapter 43. Conclusion of the Lunar Works. After having reduced Mara, the father of the 3 classical furies, into cosmic dust, I then had to confront other secondary beasts of the abyss. The day was slowly ending. The delectable air of the night was inviting all living human beings who populate the face of the earth to rest from their fatigue. But I only wanted to endure the combats of the path and what is worthiest of compassion, which my memory will write without mistake. O ineffable muses! O divine, high genius! Help me now. Inspire me. Here shall your excellence reveal itself, so that my style does not retract from the nature of this matter. My profound, deep slumber was interrupted by a crash of heavy thunder, that I shook myself, as one who is violently awakened from his sleep. I rose upright, and my rested eyes moved around, searching with fixed ken, to know what place it was wherein I stood. I then saw myself inside a solitary house, next to a tenebrous path. While seated on a rustic armchair, next to the window from where the steep path could well be contemplated, I very sincerely evoked foregone times. Indeed, I had been there, in that mansion of the abyss, in other ages, and before the same path. None of this seemed new to me. I understood that I was recapitulating mysteries. By rising up from the chair, I opened the old door of that abode and I left, while walking slowly, on the solitary path. With only one glance, my sight bore into a very far space, as far as the spiritual sight is capable of penetrating, and I saw a sad, devastating and somber place. The floor was wet and I had to unexpectedly stop before a certain electric cable that was lying on the ground. A wire or copper charged with high voltage? What a horror, and I came very close to stepping on it. It is preferable to die being free than to live while being imprisoned. This is what the voice of the silence uttered on that night of mystery. So, I who was alarmed and had intended to retreat in those precise moments, felt comforted resolutely. I advanced through those sublunar places, along the tortuous, abysmal path. Horrendous path within the dreadful entrails of the pale moon, mysterious path from the past great cosmic day, how many remembrances it brings to me. Ah yes. I was active in the former Mahamanvantara, and I lived among the Selenites of the lunar world. Now that old lunar world is a cadaver, and from the Selenites nothing remains, not even their bones. Deep reflections touched terribly the most intimate fibers of my soul, while quietly I walked throughout that submerged path. Meanwhile, my planetary body, here on this earth, was lying down in a profound rest. Is it perhaps something rare for the soul to escape from the physical body during meditation? To dream? No. It has been a long time since I stopped dreaming. Those who awake their consciousness do not dream anymore. Self-cognizance? This is a different faculty, and I have it because I am very well dead. Objective consciousness? It is obvious that if I would not have it, I could not inform my beloved readers about life in the superior worlds. Studies. Yes, I perform them during the samadhi, when I am out of my physical body. However, beloved reader, let us go back to our narration and forgive me this small but important divergence. The steep path surprisingly turned towards the left and penetrated within certain very picturesque hills. In those hills, I saw something similar to a national park on a Sunday. A variegated conjunction of human creatures seemed to pleasantly enjoy the prairie land. For the recreational entertainment of many, some walking vendors were coming and going, selling multicolored balloons here, there, and everywhere. This was a living symbol of the profane life. This is how I understood it. However, it is ostensible that I wanted to live all of this with intensity. I was very absorbed in all of this while contemplating the perpetual crowds, when suddenly, to and behold, something unexpected and unusual happened. It appeared to me as if momentarily time was truly standing still. In an instant of terror, a sanguinary wolf emerged from within the bushes and with ferociousness and malicious sight intended to catch his prey in vain. Before this wolf, some hens that desperately cackled escaped from their pitiless death. This was extraordinary occult symbology, a pusillanimous, cowardly, timid farmyard bird, a cruel, pitiless, sanguinary wolf. Dread. Terror. Fright. These were sublunar human states from the human infraconsciousness, and I, who have died within myself. I was ignoring the existence of these psychic aggregates within my own atomic infernos. Fortunately, I never forget my holy pike while in hard battle. Thanks to my divine mother Kundalini, I could exceed many in strength and ability with the spear. Having had the main demon Elvile personifications of my horrible, if human defects fall, my lunar works epically concluded by giving death to many other infernal beasts with the holy spear. It is not irrelevant to say that I had collected a very rich booty of war after many bloody battles. I am referring with great emphasis to those multiple precious gems of my own consciousness, trapped, bottled up within those deformed abysmal bodies. The final part of the work was completely of an atomic nature. To expel these malignant intelligences from within their nuclear habitats is not easy. Indeed, this is what is understood as the transformation of the black waters into white. Now, these atoms have converted themselves into marvelous vehicles of certain luminous intelligences. These are magnificent sparks, atoms that are capable of informing me about the activities of the secret enemy. One night of glory, I had the highest great honor that can be granted to a human being. I was visited by the cosmic Christ. The adorable one was carrying a great book in his right hand and said to me, "Now you are going to enter into the sphere of Mercury." When I saw the Master, I could not say anything, except to utter, "Lord, you have arrived sooner than I thought. I did not expect you so soon." The living Christ sweetly answered, "Sometimes I delay when I have to come in the month of March. You have to still keep dying." What? To keep dying? Still? Yes, the adorable one answered. You have to keep dying, he repeated. Then, what happened after that was prodigious. The Master slowly rose up towards the sun of midnight. He slightly detached himself from the Star King in order to bless me and to forgive my ancient errors. Chapter 44. Enigmas. Tai Shan writes, I knew Buddhism since I was 13 years old. At the age of 18, I entered the priesthood. Later, I read a thesis one day brought by a monk named Su Yen, entitled Advanced Meditations. This made me comprehend that I had not yet arrived at that point. I then went to see Su Yen and I followed his instructions about the way to meditate on the word on the fourth night. Perspiration surged from my whole body, and so, I felt comfortable and light. I remained in the meditation hale, concentrated, without exchanging a word with anyone. Afterwards, I saw Miao Kaofeng, who told me to continue meditating on the word Wu without rest day or night. When I got up, before dawn, the Hua Tu, the meaning of the word Wu, the es. Rest day or night. When I got up, before dawn, the Hua Tu, the meaning of the word Wu, the essence of this phrase, immediately presented itself before me. As soon as I had some drowsiness, I came down off of my seat. The Hua Tu, that is to say the word Wu, accompanied me while I walked, while I prepared the bed or the food, when I took the spoon or when I put aside the chopsticks. It was with me all the time, in all my activities, day and night. If one succeeds in fusing one's mind into a continuous and homogeneous whole, enlightenment is assured. As a result of the former advice, I completely convinced myself that I had reached that state. On the 20th of March, Master Yen addressed the congregation. Sit erect, refresh your minds as if you are at the edge of a precipice that is about 1,000 feet in height and concentrate yourself on your Hua Tu, the magical word. Wu. If you work in this manner during 7 days, without resting for even a second, you will undoubtedly attain realization. Performed a similar effort 40 years ago. I began to improve as soon as I followed his instructions. On the 3rd day, I felt that my body was floating in the air. On the 4th day, I became completely unconscious in regards to what was happening in this world. That night, I remained leaning against a balustrade. My mind was so serene as if I was not conscious. I constantly kept the Hua Tu, the magic word Wu, before me, and afterwards I returned to my seat. At the moment that I was going to sit down, I suddenly had the sensation that my entire body, from the crown of the head to the tip of the toes, was divided. I had the sensation that my cranium was being broken or that I was being raised to the sky from a pit of about 10,000 feet in depth. I then told Master Yen about this indescribable ecstasy and the detached happiness that I had just experienced. But Master Yen said, "No, it is not this. You must continue working in your meditation." To my request, he quoted some words of the Dharma, of which the last verses were, "To propagate and glorify the noble deeds of the Buddhas and the patriarchs, you need to receive a good hammer blow on your neck." I asked myself, why do I need a hammer blow on my neck? Evidently, there was still a slight doubt in my mind, something that I was not sure about. So, I continued meditating a long time every day for half a year. Afterwards, on a certain occasion when I was preparing a brew of medicinal herbs for a headache, I remembered a koan, enigmatic phrase, in which Red Nose made a question to Neja. If you return your bones to your father and your flesh to your mother, where, then, would you be? I then remembered that, when the monk who received me asked me the same question, I did not know what to answer him, yet now, suddenly, my doubt disappeared. Afterwards, I went to see Meng Shan. Master Meng Shan asked me, when and where can we consider that our Zen work is finished? Once again, I did not know what to answer. Master Meng Shan insisted that I must work with greater insistence in meditation, dhyana, and that I must leave aside all human habitual thoughts. Every time that I entered into his room and gave an answer to his question, he said that I did not understand the thing. One day, I meditated from evening to the following morning, utilizing the power of dhyana to maintain myself and to advance, until I directly reached the state of profound subtlety. Leaving dhyana, I went towards where the master was and I told him about my experience. He asked me, which is your original face? When I was going to answer, the master cast me out and closed the door. Since that moment, I achieved, each day, a subtle improvement. Later, I comprehended that the whole difficulty had arisen because I did not remain long enough with Master Su Yen, working in the delicate and subtle aspects of the task. But how fortunate I was to have found such an excellent Zen master. It is only thanks to him that I was able to reach that state. I did not comprehend that if one practices in an incessant and insistent manner, one will always achieve something every now and then. Thus, one's ignorance will diminish at each step of the path. Master Meng Shan told me, this is similar as to polishing a pearl. The more you polish it, the more it shines, and it becomes clear and pure. A polishing of that kind is superior to an entire work of incarnation. Nonetheless, when I wanted to answer my master's question, he always told me that I was lacking something. One day, in the middle of meditation, the word lacking presented itself within my mind, and I suddenly felt that my body and my mind were broadly wide open from the medulla of my bones in a complete manner. This feeling was as if an ancient mountain of sand was suddenly dissolved under the scorching sun that surged after many dark and hidden nights. I could not help it, and I burst out in laughter. I jumped from my seat, I took the arm of Master Meng Shan and asked him, tell me, what am I lacking? What am I lacking? The master slapped me 3 times and I prostrated myself before him 3 times. He told me, oh, Tai Shan, you have taken many years in order to reach this point. Chapter 45. The Final Illumination. The truth must be comprehended by means of an instantaneous illumination. However, the factual thing, the complete inner self-realization of the being must be intensely worked in a gradual manner. The mantra Wu mainly refers to the awakening of the mystical experience in its immediate sense, and the Samyik Sambodhi, Chu in China, denotes a permanent and complete illumination. If by means of a retrospective exercise, we return to the original point of departure and we theoretically return our bones to our father and our flesh to our mother, then, where would we be? Obviously, we will be in the seed, in the semen. This induces us to think that without the Sahaja Methuna we could never comprehend the essence of the sentence of the famous Hua Tu Wu. Observe the verticals of the W, study it in its whole. The graphical shape of its combinations clearly emphasizes the basic idea of successive exaltations preceded always by tremendous humiliations. Whosoever wants to ascend must first descend, this is the law. Initiation is both death and matrimony at the same time. For greater comprehension of the Hua Tu Wu, it is not irrelevant to repeat the following. The descent into the 9th sphere, sex, was from ancient times the maximum ordeal for the supreme dignity of the Hierophant. Jesus, Buddha, Hermes, Dante, Zoroaster, etc., had to pass through this difficult ordeal. Mars descends into the ninth sphere in order to retemper his sword and conquer the heart of Venus. Hercules does so in like manner, in order to clean the stables of Augeas and Perseus, as well as to cut off the head of Medusa with his flaming sword. However, for the good of the great cause, it is important to remember that in Zen, next to the W, the radical U shines, which is a living symbol of that great womb within which the worlds are gestated. In cosmic grammar, the rune UR is certainly the divine mother space, the sacred womb where beasts, humans, and gods are gestated. It is unquestionable that without the esoteric power of Devi Kundalini, to work in the flaming forge of Vulcan, sex would be impossible. The magisterium of fire must be performed in 7 days or periods. Let us remember our astrological formula: Moon, Mercury, Venus, Sun, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. The starry heaven of Uranus and the classic Empyrean are for those who have reached the longed-for goal. I earned the right to enter into the lunar heaven after a previous humiliation. This is the law for all worlds. No one can definitely enter into the heavens of Mercury, Venus, etc., without previously having esoterically worked in their corresponding planetary infernos. The Wu experiences are one and many. They are one because they are identical in essence, and they are many because they differ in profundity, clarity, and efficacy. This provides a notion of the sense and nature of Wu. What is your original face? A tremendous question of Master Meng Shan. The Hebraic Bible states, "Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh." Genesis 2 verse 24. Let the gods of the dawn utter. Let the muses inspire me. Let the hurricane howl. It is written with fiery embers in the book of all mysteries that all the avatars of Lishvara always present the requirement of the omnimerciful universal spirit of life, in order to restore upon the face of the earth the original face, the paradisiacal pristine state of Adam Kadmon, the androgynous entity who incarnates the pair, man and woman. This precious re-establishment of the cosmic being within each one of us is precisely performed in the delightful instance of that supreme ecstasy of love in which two beings, one masculine, the other feminine, in complete coitus, consciously cede their differential individuality in order to fuse themselves into one. Therefore, since this unity is not only physical, but also a psychic-spiritual type, the doctrines that reject the sexual magic of Eros are anti-human and anti-divine. The recognition of the human being as the image and likeness of the living cosmos and thereby the cosmic purpose of his sexual potency is found in the cultural spiritual environment of the present era, and mainly in the most refined esoteric circles. Medieval theologians and naturalists knew something about the connection between the sexual energy and the prodigious forces that traversed the unalterable infinite. Thus, Saint Albert Magno was imbibed in the profound belief about the power of the stars, which exerts a decisive influence upon the sexual potency of the individual. Saint Albert believed that the stars were bipolar, in other words, of an angelic and animal nature. He arrived at the logical conclusion that a double union, spiritual and animal, can occur in the matrimony. Saint Augustine, the Gnostic patriarch, emphasizes the idea that the sexual libido encompasses not only the entire body, but also the inner being, which in the carnal agitation is linked with the psychic, in such a manner that a pleasurable sensation is formed that has no equal among sensual sensations. Thus, in the instant in which it reaches its culminating point, all consciousness and all energy of understanding is disconnected. This disconnection between consciousness and intellect is precisely the one that can transfigure the delightful coitus into something supernatural, spiritual, and terribly divine. The ultimate goal of mystical practices, like that of Zen or that of Christian quietism of Fray Miguel de Molinos, is that they can lead us to the stillness and silence of the mind. The new arrives only when the mind is still, when the mind is in silence. In those moments of indescribable delights, the consciousness escapes from within the mortifying mind in order to experience the reality. The second Zen patriarch asked to the Bodhidharma, "How is it possible to attain the Tao?" The Bodhidharma answered, Externally, all activity ceases. Internally, the mind ceases to be agitated. When the mind has become a wall, you can then enter the Tao. Chan Buddhists in China rarely speak about Sambodhi, the final illumination, the famous Chu. Since Wu is the fundamental and mystical experience of awakening to the truth, prajna, the person who attains the Wu experience might not be capable of dominating, deepening, and maturing it. Before reaching perfection, a lot of work in the ninth sphere is needed. This is with the purpose of removing the dualistic, egotistical, and profoundly rooted thoughts which surge forth from within the passions. The Gospel of the Tao has stated, "Purify your heart. Cleanse your thoughts. Stop your appetites and conserve the semen." The author of the El-Tab, a marvelous book appreciated by the Arabs, does not become tired of glorifying the coitus. With just reason, the coitus is for him the most magnificent and sacred hymn of praise, the most noble aspiration of the man and his companion the woman, behind the primeval union and the paradisiacal delights. Love is the fiat lux of the Book of Moses, the divine command, the law for all. Continents, seas, worlds, and spaces. When we courageously grasp that lance of Eros with the evident purpose of reducing into dust all and every one of those subjective elements that we carry within, then, light surges forth. Imprisoned essence, light in a potential state exists within every subconscious entity. Thus, in the same manner that the atom liberates energy when it is fractionated, likewise, the total destruction of any of our internal elements liberates light. We need to make light within each one of us. "Light, more light," exclaimed Goethe, when dying. Sexual magic is the eternal foundation of the luminous and spermatic fiat of the first instant. The radical death of the ego and other inhuman elements that we carry within ourselves leads us to the final illumination, Samyak Sambodhi. Therefore, the Zen or Wu illumination varies greatly, from the superficial glimpse of the beginners over their mental essence, until the total Buddhism, as was performed by Buddha. White Tantrism. The authentic tantric doctrines of Vatsyayana's Kama Sutra and Kalyanamala's Anangaranga complement themselves with the Vajroli Yoga and the Pankatapa. The legitimate Hindustani Kama Sutra has nothing to do with certain spurious, bastard, adulterated type of editions, which, displaying the same title, profusely circulate everywhere, in all the Western countries. This mentioned classic book of the Hindu amatory art is divided into 7 parts. The first part exposes conjointly the impulse of life and the arts and sciences which are of practical use in sexual magic. The female masters of female apprentices are only those women who have practiced sexual magic with a man. The female disciple has to possess 74 basic arts. Subsequently, among many of these arts are chanting, music, instrumentation, dance, tattooing, elaboration of beds with flower petals, musical execution with cups containing pure water, mineralogy, science of chemistry, organization of quail, ram and rooster fights and technique on all literary works. The pupil is obliged to learn magic arts. She must not only know how to prepare the diagrams and amorous filters of esoteric efficacy, but moreover, to instruct herself about sortilege and mantras. In the second part of Kama Sutra, the great Hindustani master Vatsyayana wisely exposes an abundant esoteric teaching about the art of loving, occupying himself very specially on something extraordinary, that is indeed, the division of the types of women and men in accordance with the size of their sexual parts. He intelligently presents 3 types of men who are designated in accordance with their phallus as 1. Hare, 2. Bull, 3. Stallion. In comparison to these males, the women are also classified in 3 types in accordance with the constitution of their yoni, sexual organ. 1. Gazelle, 2. Mare, 3. Female elephant. This differentiation in both sexes gives fundamentally 9 amorous combinations, which come to remind us of the 9th sphere, excellent sexual pleasure. A. Hare with gazelle. B. Bull with mare. C. Stallion with female elephant. Unmatched sexual unions. A. Hare with mare. B. Hare with female elephant. C. Bull with gazelle. D. Bull with female elephant. E. Stallion with mare. F. Stallion with gazelle. The 9 possibilities of sexual union are subdivided into 3 types, in accordance with the size of the sexual organs. 1. The proportion of the same size indubitably is the best. 2. The relationship between large and small organs, among which the enjoyment of pleasure is of the most unfortunate. 3. All of the other amorous relations can be classified as regular. Unquestionably, the eventual temperament of the consorts displays a great role in the sexual act. These are grouped in 3 types. A. Cold. B. Mild. C. Hot. Therefore 9 types of couplings are possible in the 9 sphere, namely a cold with cold, B. A mild with mild, C. A hot with hot. Unmatched sexual unions. A cold with mild, B. Cold with hot, C. A mild with cold, D. A mild with hot, E. A hot with cold, F. Hot with mild. Among the Hindus, the span of the sexual enjoyment, that is to say, the possibility of a long permanency of it, is not based, for instance, in a purely sensual animal activity. Rather, it is considered as vital matter, which expresses in the performed act a demonstration of a very developed and more exquisite culture. Deficient is considered the consort who is found not truly oriented about the most intimate sexual phenomena. This is what any man is, according to Resimanjuri, who when in the act of love does not reflect upon what he should or should not do. By all means it stands out in complete meridian clarity that also the prolongation of the sexual enjoyment is divided in 3 types. 1. Fast. 2. Middle. 3. Slow. The secret of the god's happiness consists in the relation of him with himself. From such a relation, in accordance with the law of the philosophical analogies, comes every cosmic vehicle, every sexual junction. Therefore, the sexual act is a legitimate right of the human being. It is the happiness of God expressing itself through ourselves. Mohammed said, "Coitus is an act even pleasing unto religion if, whenever it is performed, it is with the invocation to Allah and with one's own woman for reproduction." The Quran states, "Go and take for a wife a maiden whom you caress and who caresses you." Do not begin coitus without previously arousing each other with caresses. The Prophet emphasizes, "Your women are your tilth, so come into your tillage how you choose, but do a previous good act for yourselves, and fear God, and know that one day you are going to meet him." Accordingly, with the former thoughts, it is ostensible that the delightful coitus with the adorable woman is certainly a form of praying. In those moments of supreme enjoyment, we convert ourselves into collaborators of the Creator Logos. We continue with the radiant and, in every instant, recreative task of the maintenance of the universe within the mysterious bosom of the eternal mother space. Do as your Creator does, as a powerful man in deeds and strength, who has consciousness in what he does. Thus, you will obtain double enjoyment, an increasing seminal liquor and healthy and strong children. This is what Muhammad said, 10 graces bequests Allah to the man who grants his sympathy to the woman with caressing hands, 20 if he presses her against his heart, yet, if his amorous embrace is the authentic one, then, he obtains from God 30 graces for every kiss. Kalyan Amala emphasizes the transcendental idea that the exact fulfillment of the code of love is much more difficult than the intellectual humanoid mistakenly thinks. The preliminary enjoyments are complicated in themselves. Therefore, this art must be employed in exact accordance with the precepts in order to arouse the woman's passion, in the same way that a fire is kindled, for her yoni to become softer, more elastic, and suitable for the act of love. A wise author stated, Anangaranga confers great importance to both components of the couple in that they keep their everyday life from taking on a lukewarm quality, or letting weariness or satiety enter into their relationship, by consummating their love with spiritual absorption and total surrender. The method of intercourse, that is to say, the love-making position, is denominated asana. For modalities must be differentiated. 1. Atanadanda. 2. Tiriyak. 3. Upavishta. 4. Athida. Since the esoteric study of these 4 tantric asanas has a complicated content, with exclusively pedagogical goals, we will limit ourselves in this present book to specifically transcribing that sexual position named upawishta. Upawishta means seated position. 12 sub-postures are given from this position. A. The especially favorite Padmasana. The man sits on the bed or on a carpet with his crossed legs. He receives the woman over his legs, and she envelopes the body of the male with her legs in such a way that her 2 feet come to make contact with the masculine coccyx. Thus, the woman absorbs the phallus. B. Both seated and during the delightful act, the woman with one hand takes one of her legs aloft. C. Man and woman entwine their hands behind each other's respective necks. D. While the woman takes in her hands the feet of the man, he holds those of the woman. E. The man takes with his arms the legs of the woman, he lets them to repose over the arc of his elbows and entwines his arms behind her neck. F. The turtle posture, both of them seat, in such a way that their mouth, hands, and legs are mutually touching. G. Seated with the legs widely apart, the man penetrates her with his member and presses between his thighs the thighs of the woman. H. This posture is only executable by a very strong man with a very light woman. The man places the legs of the woman over his elbows aloft. He then penetrates her with his member. Thereafter he oscillates her from right to left. I. The same former posture, but the oscillation of the woman is effectuated back and forth. The Oriental upawishta is marvelous. However, it is unquestionable that we, the Gnostics, are not exclusivists. It is obvious that in the Western world, many mystics prefer the following asana. A. The woman lies down on the bed on her back, legs widely open, that is to say, opened from right to left, with a low pillow, or without it. B. The man places himself over the woman, between her legs, masculine face, chest and belly making direct contact with the body of the female. C. Forehead against forehead, chest against chest, plexus against plexus, all of the corresponding astral centers superpose in order to permit an interchange of magnetic currents and thus establishing a complete androgynous. D. Introduce very slowly the virile member into the vagina. Avoid violent actions. The movement of the phallus inside the uterus must be slow and delicate. E. The coitus must endure at least 1 hour. F. Withdraw from the woman before the spasm in order to avoid the ejaculation of the semen. G. The phallus must be withdrawn from within the uterus very slowly and with much delicacy. Pierre Huard Ming Wang, when referring to Chinese medicine, states the following. Taoism has other influences in medicine, as is confirmed by reading the compilation of Taoist treatises The Xingming Quelchen, from the year 1622 approximately. 3 regions are remarkable in the human body. The superior or cephalic region is the origin of the spirits which live in the body. The pillow of jade, yuchen, is found in the lower back part of the head. The so-called pillow bone is the occipital, chinku. The palace of Na1, this term is derived from the Sanskrit word nirvana, is found in the brain, known also as the sea of the bone marrow, suyai. It is the origin of seminal substances. The middle region is the vertebral column, considered not as a functional shaft, but as a channel which joins the cerebral cavities with the genital centers. It ends at a point called the celestial column, Tin Chu, situated at the back of the neck, at the hairline. Do not confuse this point with the acupuncture point that has the same name. The lower region includes the region of cinnabar, Tantien. In this location is seated the genital activity that is represented by the 2 kidneys, the fire of the tiger, Yang, on the left and the fire of the dragon, Ying, on the right. Sexual union is symbolized by a couple. A young man leads a white tiger and a young woman rides upon a green dragon. Lead, masculine element, and Mercury, feminine element, are about to be combined. As soon as they are united, the young couple cast their essence into a bronze cauldron, the symbol of sexual activity. However, the genital fluids, particularly the sperm, are neither eliminated nor lost but can return to the brain throughout the spinal column, thanks to which the course of life is restored. The basis of these Taoist sexual practices is coitus reservatus, whereby the sperm which has descended from the encephalon, brain, to the prostatic region, but which has not been ejaculated, returns to its origin. This is designated as the return of the substance, Huan Xing. Whatever the objections might be against the truth of this return, it is no less true that the Taoists understood the cerebral dominion over the elemental instincts, which maintains the level of generative stimulation below the threshold of ejaculation. Thus, they gave new style to the sexual act and a distinct purpose to fertilization. Sexual practices have played a great role in Taoism. The public and collective practices mentioned in the 2nd century disappeared in the 6th century. Private practices continued for such a long time that Zhang Sao, 12th century, consecrated a section for them in his Tao Chu. Indeed, Taoists and equally so Buddhists observe continence that has its basis in sexual magic. However, the first ones considered it as a form of detachment that should take them to liberation, while the second ones, in addition to their longing for attaining the Tao, were maintaining themselves chaste in order to concentrate, preserve their substance, and to live a long time. It is possible that in a similar fashion to their respiratory exercises, the Taoists were inspiring themselves in the Hindu tantric treatises. Some of these were translated into Chinese in the Epoch of Tang and known by Sun Tzu Miao. The Pao Piyutsa contains a section that is entitled The Bedchamber, 18 chapters, that was printed in 1066 and reprinted in 1307, 1544, and 1604 by Kyo Che King. This data has been taken from texts which have been included in the Annals of the Suiyai by Tomba Yasuyori in his I Sin Feng, 982-984, printed by Teki Genkin, dead in 1857. In 1854, this medical compendium of 30 chapters containing the secrets of the bedchamber was re-edited by Yi Tu Huai, 1864-1927, who reconstructed the lost texts, particularly the Ars Amatoria from the master Tonghaiwan. A great sage stated, by means of the practice of the Vajroli Mudra, the yogi makes his Shakti, that is to say the universal revealed sexual energy, in his own accord to flow, so that he will not be the only participant, but also his Lord. About the Viparita Karani he stated, this practice is the most excellent. It is the cause of the liberation for the yogi. This practice confers health to a yogi and grants him perfection. If we undress the Vajroli Mudra, if we tear the veil of Isis, then the naked truth remains, which is sexual magic, Sahaja Maithuna. The esoteric Viparita Karani teaches in a clear and precise way how the yogi can make his semen to slowly arise by means of concentration, so that man and woman in complete copulation can reach the Vajroli. Om. Obedient to the goddess, who marvelously adorned resembles a dormant serpent in the Swayanbilingam. She enjoys the beloved one and others' delights. She is captivated by the wine and radiates like a million light beams. She will be awakened, during sexual magic, by the air and fire, by the mantras Yam and Dram and by the mantra Hum. Chant the former mantras in those precise moments in which the lingam yoni are found connected in the nuptial bed. Thus, this is how Devi Kundalini, the igneous serpent of our magical powers, will awaken. Chapter 47. Third Act. Don Mario Rosso de Luna, the illustrious theosophical writer, when commenting about the third act of the Wagnerian Parsifal, textually writes the following: the third act is developed again in the domain of the Grail, a pleasant, open, spring landscape with a background of gently rising flowery meadows. The edge of the forest forms the foreground, and extends to the right to rising rocky mountains of the Grail. In the foreground, by the side of the wood is a spring, facing it, a little further back is a humble hermit's hut, leaning against a mass of rock. It is the first hour of Good Friday. Gurnemanz, now a very old man, clad as a hermit with only the tunic of the Knights of the Grail, comes out of the hut and listens from yonder to some deep groaning, as if from somebody who within a profound slumber fights against a nightmare. Gurnemanz walks firmly to a densely overgrown thorny thicket at the side. He forces the undergrowth apart and then stops suddenly. He finds Kundry, cold and stiff. The rough wintry thorns, the sad moral night of the sinner, have been concealing her for who knows how long, without knowing that the redeeming spring has arrived. The elder drags Kundry out of the bushes, carries her to a nearby grassy mound and starts to reanimate her with his breath. When at last she opens her eyes, she utters a cry. Kundry is in the coarse robe of a penitent. Her face is paler and the wildness has vanished from her looks and behavior. She gazes long at Gurnemanz, as someone who evokes ancient memories. Then, she rises, walks towards the hermit's hut, and she sets to work like a serving maid, as she did in the past with the holy knights. Kundry carries a water pitcher and goes with it in order to fill it in the spring. She then moves into the hut, where she busies herself as accustomed, as a gift of the last survivor of the Grail. Meanwhile, Parsifal emerges from the forest, entirely accoutred in black armor. With closed helm and lowered spear, he strides slowly forward with his head bowed under the weight of his uncertain thoughts. Gurnemanz draws nearer to him in case he needs to be guided. Parsifal does not respond to the ascetic's greetings. Yet, he reminds Parsifal that it is the supremely holy Good Friday, a day whose sanctity must not be scoffed at with weapons. The ineffable idol, commonly called the enchantments of Holy Friday, resounds triumphantly in the space, joyfully greeting the Redeemer amidst the august joy of the mount and the meadow, where everything smiles to the approach of the supreme moment of liberation. The bells of the Grail sound increasingly again, as of yore, calling for the holy ceremony. Gurnemanz has brought out his mantle of the Knights of the Grail, and invests Parsifal, the new king, with it. Then, they slowly start on their way up to the castle, whose splendors, thanks to the sacred, sexual spear, will return without delay. The great hall of the Grail is filled with knights and squires who from one side enter bearing Titurel's body in a coffin, and from the other carrying Amfortas on a litter, who comes to receive the last blessing of the Grail. Amfortas, the grieving son, who alone longed for death's repose, has unconsciously brought death to his father by depriving him of the immortal contemplation of the divine radiance of the regenerating cup. All knights pressing closer to Amfortas exhort him for the last time, so that he can be mindful of his charge. Amfortas, foreboding the approaching of the sweet darkness of death, resists turning towards the life that the uncovered Grail shall grant him. Thus, he leaps up in wild despair and in a tremendous paroxysm, tears open his garments asking for death in shouts. All the knights recoil, overwhelmed by the sight of his dreaded, gushing wound. Parsifal has appeared unobserved among the knights and now steps forward and extends the spear, touching Amfortas' side with its point. The wound finally, miraculously, heals. Parsifal steps towards the center, holding triumphantly the spear aloft before him. All gaze and prostrate themselves in supreme rapture at the uplifted spear, while Amfortas, taking the sacred relic from the shrine, falls to his knees before it in silent prayer and contemplation. The Grail then gradually glows with a soft light, imbibing the whole environment with its glory. Parsifal, raised from that instant as a supreme dignitary, waves the Grail in blessing in that moment and forever over the worshipping restored holy brotherhood of knights. Parsifal rises after a further silence, thrusts the spear into the ground before him, lays shield and sword beneath it, opens his helmet, takes it off from his head and lays it with the other arms. He then kneels ecstatically before the spear in silent prayer. Gurnemanz watches Parsifal with astonishment and emotion. He beckons to Kundry, who has just emerged from the hut. She recognizes in him the one who once killed the Swan, the sinner who has come, as the man, to the holy precinct, throughout the ways of desolation and disconcertion, 100 times damned, through passages without end. Innumerable battles. The hermit informs him at once about the state of disgrace on which the Knights of the Grail had fallen upon. All have been dispersed or are dead except him, since Amfortas in maddened defiance craved only for death while fighting against the damnation of his wound, which brought torment to his soul. No entreaties, no misery of his knights could move him to uncover again the sacred cup, for the covered Grail ceases to prolong his life with its immortal breath. Parsifal, springing up in intense grief, seems about to fall in a faint before the spring. Gurnemanz holds him upright and sets him down on the grassy mound. Kundry hurriedly fetches a bowl of water with which to sprinkle the face of Parsifal. Gurnemanz, gently spurning Kundry, says, "Not with this. The holy spring itself, the Yoni, shall refresh and bathe our pilgrim. I suspect he has today to fulfill a sublime task, to perform a divine mission. Then let him be free of stain, and the dust of lengthy wanderings now be washed from him. Parsifal is gently led by the two to the edge of the spring. During those moments, Kundry loosens his greaves while Gurnemanz removes his body from the old armor, black from the pain and battles. He is left with only his white tunic of a neophyte, which is the new tunic of purity. Every old ferment of sin has been expiated already, as St. Paulo might say. Kundry bathes the feet of the chosen one. She draws from her bosom a golden phial and pours part of its contents over Parsifal's feet. Kundry, as a new Magdalene, then dries him with her hastily unbound hair, while Gurnemanz empties the phial over Parsifal's head, the new king. He then gently strokes his head and then folds his hands upon it, anointing him as a redeemer of the Grail and as a sapient for compassion. Titurel, alive again for a while, raised himself a little in his coffin. At the same time, from the dome, a white dove descends and hovers over the head of the new king, the king sapient in compassion. The sacred chants explode more vigorous than ever. Kundry, the woman's symbol, slowly sinks lifeless to the ground amidst the universal homage that heaven and earth gloriously render to the hero, who has defeated the potencies of evil and who has achieved liberation by means of effort and sacrifice. Chapter 48. The Sign of Jonah. An evil and adulterous generation seeketh after a sign, and there shall no sign be given to it, but the sign of the prophet Jonah. For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. Matthew 12 verses 39 to 40. This exotic narration, apparently somehow confused with the marvelous book of Jonah, has an esoteric foundation. It is in regards to a very ancient symbolic ceremony that consisted in leaving the initiate for 3 days and 3 nights within the unutterable mystery of a cavern or coffin, similar to a fish in its shape. It is disclosed in some old traditions that are lost within the frightful night of all centuries, that during this interval, while the body of the initiate was laid down as a cadaver within the coffin, the soul, which was absent from the dense human form, was directly experiencing in the superior worlds the ritual of life and death. The elemental water, in equal fashion to the perfumed elemental earth, are without any doubt passive or simply negative symbols. They represent the preliminary purification and the serious basis of any regenerative process that afterwards has to become effective. By means of the superior and active elements, the air and the fire, which respectively are symbols of the spirit and of the great reality. The extraordinary and marvelous form of the old coffin of Osiris, because of its likeness and significance, naturally brings into the memory another fish, which is magnificently represented in the Semitic alphabet by the letter Samek. It is a letter that occupies the 15th Kabbalistic place, which in the beginning undoubtedly symbolized the famous constellation of the Whale, a constellation under whose direction we have to perform all of the works in the 9th sphere. The Kabbalistic 15, Typhoon Baphomet, the devil, the animal passion, is the representation of such a cited constellation. This invites us to comprehend what is the work in the 9th sphere, sex. The initiate who spills the cup of Hermes will be fulminated by the 16th arcanum of the constellation of Aries. The initiate will fall from the tower straightened by the thunderbolt of cosmic justice and will form the inverted pentalpha, with the head aiming downwards and the legs aiming upwards. If we Kabbalistically add the numbers of the 15th arcanum of the constellation of the Whale, we will have the following result: 1 plus 5 is equal to 6. The number 6 in the tarot is the arcanum of the lover. It is the arcanum of the human being who is between virtue and passion. You must be wisely polarized with the 6th arcanum in order to defeat the frightful 15th arcanum, the constellation of the Whale. Remember, beloved reader, that in the center of your chest you have a very special magnetic point which captures the waves of light and glory that come from your human soul. The human soul is Tiferet, the 6th arcanum of the tarot. Listen and obey the orders which emanate from your human soul. Act in accordance with those intimate impulses. Work in the forge of the Cyclops when your soul requires it from you. If you learn to obey, you will not perish in the belly of the whale. Behold, you have turned into a fish who works within the chaotic waters of the first instant. Now you will comprehend why the coffin of Osiris has the form of a fish. It is unquestionable that the 7 days or periods in the book of Genesis of Moses are synthesized in these 3 days and 3 nights of Jonah within the belly of the whale. This is an initiatic ceremony that was repeated by the great Kabir Jesus in the Holy Sepulchre. Some people who are badly informed mistakenly suppose that the simple symbolic initiatic ceremony of the Magnum Sepulchre, with its famous 3 days, plus the catalepsy of the physical body, is the whole thing. These good people lamentably ignore that this simple ceremony is only a sign, symbol, or allegory of something immense and terrific that is projected into the unknowable. The prophet Jonah, working under the direction of the constellation of the whale, inside the profound well of the universe, in the 9th sphere, sex, performs his work in 3 days, or 3 more or less long periods. A. He builds the wedding garment of the soul and establishes within himself a permanent center of consciousness. B. He eliminates the 3 traitors of the intimate Christ and reduces the dragon of darkness and the secondary beasts into cosmic dust, sublunar work. C. He continues dying in the superior spheres of Mercury, Venus, Sun, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, etc. The first period of time concludes with the second birth, which the great Kabir Jesus spoke about to the Rabbi Nicodemus. The second period finishes with a marvelous wedding as a result. This is the wedding of the human soul with Guinevere, the queen of the Jinn Knights. To women we say that they then get married with the eternal beloved one. The third period magisterially concludes with the resurrection of the intimate Christ within our own heart. The esoteric Hindustani texts constantly mention the famous Trimurti, Atman Buddhi Manas. This is the innermost with his 2 souls, Buddhi and Manas. Inside the intellectual humanoid, mistakenly called a human being, only an insignificant fraction from the third aspect of that Trimurti is incarnated. Such a fraction is denominated essence. In Nippon Zen, this fraction is simply named Buddhata. Lamentably, this essence abides in dreams within the variegated and grotesque conjunction of submerged, tenebrous entities, which constitute the ego, the myself, the itself. However, such an essence is the raw matter in order to build soul, a concept that unfortunately has not yet been very well understood by our Gnostic students. The Chinese Tao clearly teaches that the essence, which is bottled up within all of these conjunctions of devil-is that constitute the ego, has to pass through incessant alchemical transformations in the 9th sphere, before converting itself into the seminal pearl. The marvelous reflex of the sexual energy in a form of a luminous whirlwind, like when a ray of light returns after crashing against a wall, comes to crystallize within ourselves, forming the golden flower, which, as it is known, comes to establish within the neophyte a permanent center of consciousness. The seminal pearl, developing itself by means of sexual magic and the formidable work with the lance of Longinus, has to pass through unutterable bitterness before converting itself into the auric embryo, golden flower. The second birth is an extraordinary, marvelous cosmic event. Here is where we incarnate the third aspect of the Trimurti, Atman Buddhi Manas. The human soul, the superior manas of the Hindustani, enters within the auric embryo. From that moment, it can be said that we are human beings with soul, sacred individuals, truly responsible people in the most complete sense of the word. The golden embryo, dressed with the wedding garment of the soul, truly experiences a supreme joy in the moment in which it is fused with the human soul. All of the experiences of life are found resumed within the golden embryo. That is why it is ostensible that the golden embryo originates deep transformations within the pneumatic immortal principles of the human being. This is how we convert ourselves into adepts of the White Brotherhood. The matrimony with Guinevere, the divine Amazon, is indeed another marvelous event which marks the glorifying finale of the second great day or period. It is unquestionable that then we experience another radical transformation, for inside Buddhi, as if inside of a fine and transparent cup of alabaster, the flame of prajna is burning. However, it is indubitable that the superlative transformation is only possible with the resurrection of the intimate Christ within the heart of the human being. This is the culminating step of the third period, the formidable moment in which the constellation of the whale is vomiting out the prophet Jonah on the shores of Nineveh the Supreme. moment in which Jesus the Great Kabir resurrects, the extraordinary second of the triumph of Parsifal in the resplendent temple of the Holy Grail. Chapter 49. The Overture of Parsifal. Don Mario Rosso de Luna, the great Spanish sage, writes, "The Overture of Parsifal," says Rogelio Villar, "amazes in general with the grandiosity, majesty, inspiration, and beauty of its arrangement, with the purity of its lines, and with the color and tinge of its wise and artistic instrumentation, sweet and gentle, grandiose and solemn." It marked the end of the evolution initiated in Tannhauser and Lohengrin. In these inspired works are found sketched his theories about the lyrical drama that reaches its ultimate extremes in the very beautiful overture of Parsifal. Its melodic fragmentary pieces, leitmotifs, which were heard during the course of Wagner's drama in the different situations, are of a great expressive potency. In relation with the character of the poem, these are always subordinated to the spirit of the literary phrase. The prelude and the consecration of the Holy Grail, Supper of the Apostles, is a magnificent scene and with intense emotion in the first act. The prelude and enchanted garden of Klingsor, voluptuous scene of the flowers, and the dramatic duo of seduction between Kundry and Parsifal is in the second act. The brief and melancholic prelude, the moving scene of the baptism, one of the moments of more emotion in Parsifal, and the enchantments of Holy Friday, scenes of sublime beauty, are in the third act. It is most gentle and poetic because of its delicacies, and rich and exuberant because of its orchestration, as are all of the salient situations of the opera, filled with enchanted poetry and of an exquisite tenderness, delicate or sweet, somber or gloomy, always with the character of the poem. Other interesting episodic pieces, due to the work of its orchestration that gives a descriptive character, are the Morning Prayer of Gurnemanz, the Departure of Kundry, the King's Cortege with its panoramic view, as well as the Parliament of Gurnemanz under the shade of a secular tree, where Gurnemanz talks to his squires about the origin of the Order of the Grail, Kundry, the agony of Amfortas, and the sortilege of Klingsor. What also stands out in the second act is the whole sinister scene of the infernal magician, in which he takes advantage of his cunning skills in order for Kundry, the Eve of Hebrew mythology, to seduce Parsifal. And in the third act, what stands out is the desolated scene of Amfortas, with its deep emotion and the funeral march. In the overture of Parsifal, there are symphonic melodies of an imponderable beauty, delectable sounds covered and fused with an art so new, so suitable to the environment in which the action is developed, the character of the landscape, poetic musical images so expressive, and true assertions of interpretations of the legend of the Holy Grail that subjugate. Intermixed with an art without precedents are themes heard from the orchestra, such as the Supper, Titurel, the Order of the Grail, Kundry, Amfort Parsifal, which symbolize faith, compassion, humbleness, melancholy, love, resignation, the Swan, the Spear, and others whose signification is important to know in order to enjoy completely of the Wagnerian conception in the whole of its magnitude and grandiosity. Amfortas symbolizes remorse, Titurel is the voice of the past, Klingsor is sin, thy, Parsifal is redemption, Gurnemanz, the guru, is tradition, and Kundry is seduction. Samael Aun Weor.